Do you ever ask yourself, how would my life be different if I had made different choices? Would I be happier, more wealthy? Here's a humorous novel that explores that question, venturing back to that magical time in the early 90s when grunge was taking over big hair bands. It was just when our hero, Amy Gare, began to face the real world. You Hawkeye fans just might enjoy the setting as well. Goodbye Def Leppard, I'll Miss Those Jeans by Steph Kramer can be found on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's free for Kindle Unlimited subscribers. Ah, yes. What it would be like to be able to go back in time. How about let's go back in time about 3 hours ago, 3.5 hours ago, before what we just saw, which is one of the most confusing, I'll say shocking, but if I say that, then there'll be a bunch of annoying people that come on here and say, you were wrong all along. We knew this was going to happen. They weren't ever going to go undefeated, yada, yada, yada. This is one of the most shocking results I've seen in the history of this Kirk Ferentz-led program. I'm joined by none other than the guy who makes this all worth it and a guy who helps calm our every fear, and that's Coach Don Patterson. Late on a Saturday night following, again, what I am calling one of the most confusing and I think devastating losses, in at least recent history under Kirk Ferentz. Coach, welcome. You look good. In spite of what we just saw, I know these last 3.5 hours were not easy for Hawkeye fans to watch. So much to unpack, not enough time to do it. It's late. We're going to be here a while. You start, Don. You're usually better with words in these circumstances because I really don't know where to start. What on earth? What on earth?
Well, as you are aware, their last two games have been against Oregon and Ohio State. as I understand it from watching the game tonight, they did a lot of good things in those two games too, but they simply made more mistakes than they made tonight. Played better tonight than they played recent in recent weeks at our expense. One of my fears going in, Corey, was that we would give them encouragement by the way the game was going. And you've heard me say before, if you're a favorite, you need to remove any hope that the other team has as quickly as you can. And we obviously never got that done tonight.
I want to make something very clear before we go on. Let's just make this very clear. And you're right. I watched the Michigan State-Ohio State game, and I commented on it after the game. And they did do some good things in that game. I thought Ohio State played horrendously. And that's part of the reason I went into this game. Now, I'll admit, I was just wrong. I was just wrong. I was as confident going into this game as I've been for any Big Ten game for as long as I've been doing this show. And that is the truth. So I was just frankly wrong. But Michigan State, I didn't think looked very good against Ohio State or Oregon. They failed to eclipse 250 yards of total offense in either one of those games, Don. They put up 468 on Iowa today. Explain how that's possible.
Well, I know one thing. We had more missed tackles in this game than any single game that I can remember, really. And one reason we got into those situations, they got us isolated a lot in the open field. And we had some young defensive backs that were out there playing. And we did not do a good job of making tackles in the open field. We missed too many to count. I give the receivers credit. That, what's his name?
Marsh.
Marsh, yeah. He's a freshman. He ended up unofficially with eight targets, 8 catches for 113 yards. A lot of yardage after contact, too. TJ Hall struggled at corner. Nestor struggled at that same corner position. Missed more than 1 or 2 key tackles. Lutmer missed tackles when he was in. Maybe we missed Castro more than I thought we would. I don't know how much of our problem related to the guys playing in Castro's place. And Trigger got injured, come to think of it. Did he ever come back? I'm not sure that he did. They reported maybe early fourth quarter that he had been injured and was questionable to return. I don't know that he did return. But our guys got exposed in the open field. A lot of missed tackles.
And we Cohen and Stringer did not return in this game. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah. Well, other things that come to mind. It took us too long. In any number of cases in the first half, we weren't running the ball well. Well, that's because they were loading the box. Not always, right, but enough to cause us problems. Tried to run the ball against a heavy box. That didn't work well. There were times when they didn't have a heavy box and they had decent movement in their defensive front, and they did get some penetration against us into our backfield any number of times. We were behind the chains a lot, and unlike recent games, we actually converted fairly well on 3rd and long, but not tonight. We didn't. Cade was part of the problem too. He didn't throw the ball with the necessary accuracy.
But big part of the problem, Don. Big part of the problem. That first half was as bad as I've seen, and Cade made a couple of good throws in the third quarter, but I think it's a rotten disgrace, and I know this sounds like a broken record. I think it's a rotten disgrace that you trot him back out there in the second half. That's my opinion. I just think it's a rotten disgrace. And it has nothing to do with being a guy, Don. I'm not a guy who's always called for the next guy in. But
right.
and people wanted to see Peyton Manziel or Tyler Wiegers or whoever was his backup. That has nothing to do. That is not my style in calling out whoever the next guy is, wanting him to play in place of the starter. But they've got a proven guy in Brendan Sullivan. And they just I thought they missed an opportunity at halftime to make a change. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line because we got a lot of people piling up here. We've got Alex in here first. Alex, welcome.
Good evening, gentlemen. I would ask how you guys are, but I think I know the answer to that question. So, I mean, I think, Corey, you summed it up best. This was just confusing. I was fairly confident going into this game, knowing that Michigan State may not be a terrible team, but they're not the best team. And I thought Iowa had a really good shot of, kind of doing what they did against Washington. One of the worst tackling performances I've seen by this team in a long time. That was something that I was shaking my house, yelling and screaming about the poor tackling. And then the one thing that I noticed, now I didn't pay attention too much in the first half. I started paying attention a little more in the second half, was Michigan State had 2 weeks to prepare for this, which means they saw Caleb Johnson as our number one threat. So they said, okay, we really need to isolate him, work on that defensive line on our linebackers to make sure he does not get to that second level. Obviously, we saw what happened one play. Well, Iowa decided to, okay, we're going to run inside zone up the gut. We're going to try to run Caleb Johnson, bash our heads against the effing brick wall until we break through. Instead of having some type of play action where you're on 1st and 10, you fake it to Johnson, you rotate out, and then you show okay, they're not always going to go to Caleb. We did that in the second half. I noticed on the second touchdown, we did a play action, and I believe it was Luke Lachey was wide open for about 20 yards. It's oh my gosh, look what happens when you have a guy like Caleb Johnson in your backfield. You fake it to him, he's wide open. Cade played horrible first half. He had, and this is where maybe we can talk about laces, where he had even the Seth Anderson on that last drive. He had him wide open, missed him. He missed, I don't know how many wide receivers in this game. And that one interception, I don't know if there was miscommunication going on or anything like that. Time of possession, Michigan State had it 39 to whatever the reverse of that is, almost 65%. Michigan State did not punt this entire game. On the 2-point conversion, you posted on your Twitter, it's our playbook's broken. Well, we didn't have Sullivan in there. Why are we not having Sullivan run the 2-point conversion? It was just incredibly frustrating for me to watch, and it just seems like the same old, this is what Iowa does. We're going to do this. We're not going to change anything because we're Iowa, as opposed to, okay, Michigan State knows what we're going to do. They had 2 weeks to prepare. Let's throw something else at them. And we didn't see that until the second half. And the last thing maybe I can ask is Deshaun Lee, was he hurt? Because I don't think we saw him once in this game. Obviously we knew Castro was hurt, and then Entringer got hurt third quarter. But was he that hurt, or is he that bad? Because we saw T.J. Hall in the beginning of the season get cooked a bunch of times in the first 3 games. They put Deshaun Lee in there. He held his own. And if you're going to say, well, he gave up a touchdown to Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State, that was a hell of a play by him. And then he gave up a back shoulder throw to Washington on a touchdown. It's okay, two plays that are the quarterback and the wide receiver. That was just a great throw by the quarterback, and it's hard to defend that. And if you're going to bench him for that, I scratch my head of I don't know. I'm kind of beside myself on this because I was fairly confident going into this. And I'm what is Iowa playing for? I think if we won out and got a little bit of help, Iowa had an outside chance of making the playoffs. Now, we play for wins. We can go to a bowl. It kind of helps with recruiting and everything. But as Iowa fans, as me, I was thinking, okay, Iowa still this is a great season due to our schedule, has a great shot to make it to the playoffs. We're dead now in the sense of that. So I'm not going to label this season as a failure. I label it as a disappointment. Because of just
what Alex.
if we go 6-6, it's a failure. But I just, it's this huge disappointment right now. This team had a whole lot.
It's a failure at 9-3. I'm sorry.
No, I'm maybe not to that level yet. If we lose any other game, I could probably get there with you, but I don't know. I said a lot. Thank you guys for letting me rant. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people on here going to be ranting and raving on this, and then the first half, the last thing I have written down was out of 5 drives, we went 4 3-and-outs. It can't happen in a Big Ten game like that. So
that was one of my frustrations in the first half. Realizing the way our offense has played this year, isn't it logical to expect that they're going to load up and commit to defending the run? And my point is, you've heard me say it before, you have to scare them out of doing that with man beaters. You've heard me talk about it a number of times. It's true. You have to have ways to beat them over the head with the fact that they're overcommitting to the run. And we didn't do that for the longest time. Obviously, in the second half, in the third quarter, we did some of that. That helped.
And it worked. And
my point is, you anticipate it going into the game, and you start the game running man beaters.
I mean, we saw Vanderzee, get open a few times. We saw, Lachey have a couple double catches. I know at the very end he stepped out, but he still made it kind of a heck of a nice catch. And he was pretty much absent from the game. Howard made a nice play, in that last series, I believe, to get that first down. But it's just, we didn't start with that. This is where I think the huge knock on Kirk is, where he's like, we're Iowa, we're gonna do what Iowa does. We're gonna try to 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and this is where we have to change a little bit of the philosophy. Now, unfortunately, what this game does is it shows teams like Northwestern, Wisconsin, Maryland, and Nebraska. It's like, hey, here's how to beat Iowa. Michigan State just did it, and Aiden Childs, he's, I've heard that he's one of those hot and cold players where, man, look at tonight, he was the hot hand, but man, you look at some of the other games, he is very turnover prone, and we saw Iowa get an interception. Granted, we didn't make it into any points, but the fact, and also there was a couple times when, man, that guy had a lot of time to throw, and I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like one game a season where Phil Parker gets completely outcoached. And it felt like, obviously, this is the one game. We gave up 468 yards of offense. So that's it. That's really all I have to say, unless you guys have something more.
Let's not forget, too, one of those Childs passes went directly to Schulte and right through his breadbasket into the ground. Should have been a routine play.
Yeah, I had a weird feeling when he dropped that interception. Like, it just feels like this is going to be a weird game. But, it looks like it's just the Don and Alex show. Looks like Corey's gone. So, I don't know. So, Coach, so maybe I can ask you while Carter tries to get reconnected. Like, as a coach, and you're kind of playing for a playoff. Now those hopes are essentially gone. How do you get your team motivated to play the rest of the games and compete? Like, what message do you give to the players at this point?
Well, a man should be judged by how he responds to adversity. We've got more adversity now than we had a week ago. And if you're any measure of a man, then you'll respond the right way. You'll pick yourself up, dust yourself off, get back to work, and be more determined than ever to play up to your full abilities.
Do you think the absence of Castro really affected this game as much as it did, or do you think that just Michigan State had a better game plan going in?
Well, it did seem. I said a week ago they have 2 weeks to develop their game plan for us. We only have 1 week to get ready for them. It appeared that the week off did help them.
Yeah.
Maybe the first week they probably went back to a lot of fundamental work, but on their own time, the coaches are still game planning for Iowa. Whether they introduce those plays in their extra week or not, I don't know, but they clearly had a good game plan for us, and they put individual defenders on an island, and we got exposed because we couldn't get the guys on the ground too many times to count.
Yeah.
Alex, I got to let you slide. But thank you for calling in as always, sir.
Me and Don had fun in your absence, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Obviously, having some issues with obviously having some internet issues, kind of like Iowa's offense and defense tonight. So fitting.
Anyways, win, lose, or draw, go Hawks.
Thanks,
Thank
Alex.
you, sir. Appreciate it. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse calling line. We've got and to our caller on the phone line, we've got to put you on hold. If you hang up, you're going to be put to the end. So I hate to do that, but there's nothing I can do. I keep putting you on hold, and then you keep hanging up. So whoever that is, just telling you, you're not going to jump ahead. It seems like we do this every week, don't we, Ryan? Do I not say that every single week?
Broken record, Corey.
It seems like it, yeah.
Sounds like a lot of the sentiment.
Talk about a broken record. Ryan, talk about the Iowa offense. You want to talk about the Iowa offense for a minute?
Well, the broken record is I'm going to try not to be too much of a broken record because Alex took the words out of my mouth, and I'm actually looking at my notes here, and most of it Alex covered. But if I was to ask Coach Patterson, and thank you for being here, if I was to ask you, not to put words in your mouth, but what's the most important position on a football team? I think you'd probably say quarterback. And yet I just do not understand how quarterback is not more of a priority, it feels, with what we have going on. I was absolutely happy we tried for 2 in that position, but if it wasn't a 2-point conversion, if it was, let's say, 1st and goal on the 2, Sullivan's in there. Why wasn't he in there?
It's a fair question to ask. Obviously, if Sullivan's in there for the 2-point play, you have to worry also about the quarterback being a ball carrier. One more thing to worry about if you're trying to defend that 2-point play. You've also heard me say, I know it sounds crazy, but it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I would spend at least 2 or 3 hours in preparation for the game, figuring out what the 2-point plays are going to be. And obviously, in a lot of games, you never run a 2-point play. But we always had 3 2-point plays ready to go for the game. And just to give you an idea of what else we did, each of those quarterbacks, I gave them a list of the 2-point plays, and I asked them to put them in the order in which they felt comfortable running those plays, which meant if Cade was in the game, I would look at the order in which Cade preferred the plays. If Sully was in the game, I'd look at the order in which Sully preferred the plays. In other words, I'd fit the 2-point play to the quarterback, unless I really felt that they were wrong with their assessment. But typically, the order in which they liked the plays, it related directly to their ability. That makes sense, right? They're more comfortable running plays that they think they are physically capable of running. So that gave us a better chance to be in the right 2-point call, because we could even tie it into individual quarterback that happened to be in the game at that moment.
Yeah, thank you. It just, when you look at, so what's so maddening to me, and I know you already kind of covered how they were stacking the box 10, 11. The thing is we don't even try to hide the fact that we're going to ram Caleb down your throat one way or another. And I thought it always would make sense to open up with some high percent, but downfield, 10-yard passes. That pass to Lachey on play action for 28 yards was beautiful. And that's the exact kind of play we just don't seem to look towards near enough. I mean, I was texting my Michigan State friend earlier today, and I told him I would be surprised if we hit 150 yards passing. And he was like, "What?" I'm like, "Wow, you haven't watched Iowa." I'd be surprised. And I think we got 150 on the nose, if I'm not mistaken. But I just think that would at least open the run up. Make them respect the fact that you still may not be known for throwing downfield, but you still can and will, and that it has to be respected. That will open things up for Caleb versus just ramrodding him, because it seems like we're in 3rd and long every drive, multiple times, and that's my opinion.
Appreciate that, Ryan. And real quick, I want to give a quick shout out to our super chats. C-Dub Hawk, who was the last team to not punt versus a Phil Parker D?
Wow.
I mean, that's an unbelievable stat. And I know there was the one interception, but on every other drive, Michigan State at least
kicked a field goal.
Yeah, at least, that's what I'm saying. They at least got kicked a field goal or in scoring range.
Mm-hmm.
So I know this has probably been said in the midst of my technical issues, which, like I say, are right on par with the football performance from your Iowa Hawkeyes tonight. But I don't know that I've seen – I made the comment late in that second half. Don, I've been watching Iowa football not nearly as long as a lot of people, certainly not been around Iowa football like you have. But I don't remember the last time I witnessed an Iowa defensive performance like tonight. And that includes when they gave up over 50 points to Ohio State 2 years ago, because you and I both know it's totally different. Apples
totally
to
different.
When you give up 50 plus at Columbus against a Buckeye team with an offense that you thought Iowa's offense was bad tonight, go back and watch 2022 in Columbus when Spencer Petras rolls left and throws the ball straight to a defender. That was actually a good defensive performance. They gave up 50 plus. This was a horrendous defensive performance. And they gave up 40.
The Cade McNamara's interception tonight was probably the worst interception I have seen in 5 years. I mean, was there a guy in the stadium even near him?
I had people responding to me on Twitter after that ball saying, well, receiver didn't run the route right, or he expected the tight end to be there. Who cares? There's a safety sitting on the route. Don,
yes.
Tell me I'm wrong. What does it matter if a guy ran the route wrong? You're still throwing him into a safety. No?
It appeared that he was the primary receiver on the play, right? It appeared that we meant to throw that ball to that particular jersey player.
Going back to defense, I have not seen a defensive performance like this in years. I don't recall one. I'm thinking back. I have not seen one since 2020. I can tell you that right now. I didn't see one in like none of these in 2019. I don't recall a Phil Parker coach defense, and I defend Phil a lot because sometimes people get out of control when you give up 50 plus on the road to Ohio State. People look at that as that's a bad defensive performance. No, context is important. This was a horrendous defensive performance, and those DBs, Castro out or not, Entringer out in the second half or not, those DBs couldn't tackle Ryan in sweatpants. All right, they couldn't. Ryan, you'd have run all over him tonight. I mean, I have not seen
maybe in my prime.
Don, have you seen anything like this from Iowa's offense? Am I exaggerating the level of or lack thereof from the Iowa DBs tonight? I've never seen anything like it.
That's the most missed tackles I can recall in a game in a long time.
How about the most number of just open players down the field consistently?
Right.
And let me just make this very clear, and I know I'm ranting. Dennis in the chat, I know a lot of people are going after me in the chat, and that's fine. I expect that. Didn't Corey say recently that Michigan State was a terrible football team? I never said terrible. They are not good. Kyle, I'm telling you this right now, buddy boy. I'm looking you straight in the eye. They are not good. This is not a good team they lost to tonight. That quarterback, Aiden Childs, was sub 58% through the air. he had like an 8 touchdown, 13 interception ratio type of year thus far. That offense has been bottom third, bottom quarter of the Big Ten to this point. And everybody wants to bring up the last 2 games against Ohio State and Oregon. How about their near loss to Florida Atlantic? How about their performance against Boston College? This is not a good team. I want to make that very clear. They may have had a bye week and improved and have some skill, like Aiden Childs has obviously got skill. To this point, the numbers did not lie. This is not a good football team. And I will be shocked if they get to bowl eligibility without even looking at their schedule. And they're 4-3 right now. Can they go 2-3? Yeah, maybe, I guess. But they're not a good football team.
Well, Corey, I'll just leave you with this. We're not a very good football team either, because we already covered how we cannot even come close to competing with the upper echelon of the conference, the teams that are in the top 15 and up. But beyond that, we're got absolutely owned by a mediocre at best football team. And I think if we're not real careful, we're going to be on the downslide for a little while here because of the failure we seem to have to adapt to the new climate. We are not playing in the 21st century in today's new climate. We do not adapt, and I think that's hurting us. The fact that we're going to run the ball, in very predictable times as opposed to maybe opening things up on the run by throwing first. We have no vertical game to speak of. And, here we're all celebrating one great pass to Luke Lachey. We had one really beautiful pass play. That's got to change, or we're in deep trouble. Have you seen, God forbid, Indiana today? I mean, case closed.
Appreciate the call, Ryan.
Thank
It's always
you, gentlemen. Have a good night.
Basketball season's right around the corner, sir.
Thank you. I'll see you.
Talk to you soon. Brian, thank you for the super chat, Brian. I don't know if I've ever seen Iowa's defense play poorly against the run. Schulte missed a pick, didn't cover as well as I'd hoped for a sixth-year guy. Thank you, Brian. Leeds, wouldn't blame Sully for transferring after this. Don, can we just address that real quick? Because I got so many notes, so many things to get to, people all over the place in the caller line. And if my computer goes down, Kyle, I entrust this show to you. I'm trying to work through it, but hard when it just all of a sudden hit us 10 minutes into the show. Don, why? Explain to me why you're bringing in Cade McNamara on a 2-point play. Why? Why, Don? Why? If I had you here, I'd take your shoulders and shake you. Why? Tell me. Explain that to me.
Well, the one thing we know, at that point, Michigan State is not at all concerned about any kind of play involving Cade as a runner.
Correct. And that was, by the way, that was right after Sullivan made an unbelievable play where he grabs a high snap and finds his way into the end zone on a goal line situation. Oh, by the way, it was a critical down. I just don't.
Yeah, I was amazed that it. First off, it took a really good set of hands to even handle the snap. And once he got that done, he had the presence of mind to still end up running the direction he was supposed to run. It was supposed to be play action left, roll right, with the tight end coming across the formation to be his blocker. So Sully went high in the air to fill the snap and then whirled around. And it had the same effect, of course. It was a good misdirection. It almost looked like that was supposed to be the way the play was executed, but it wasn't. Sully just made a nice reaction to a difficult situation.
So, again, why would you bring Cade in on a 2-point play? You have one chance to get into the end zone on a very important 2-point play to cut it to a field goal. Why are you bringing in a statue quarterback who, hey, he ran for like 4 yards tonight. That's the first time I've seen him run for anything positive since week 1. Why are you bringing him in that situation?
You say bringing him in.
Well, why is he in the game at that point? Why is he in the game? Why is it not Sullivan?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey. Is that immediately after Sully's touchdown?
No, it was
No.
right after Caleb
That's
Johnson.
Caleb Johnson.
After Caleb's. Well, I was going to say that's one reason that we had Cade on the field is he was on the field on the previous snap. In other words, maybe if Sully, maybe we didn't need to go for two after Sully's touchdown, maybe Sully would have been on the field for
What
the
does
2-point
that?
play.
What does that have to do with anything?
No, my point is if he was on the field on the previous play, maybe they would have simply left him out there.
But why would okay? Regardless, why wouldn't you get the right guys on the field? Drew Stevens isn't on the play prior to his extra points, but he still comes onto the field for the PAT. Explain that.
I think we're trying to find explanations for something that has no explaining.
Lemansky, thank you for the super chat. I have to accept we belong in the bottom half of the Big Ten. QB play is not executing. Appreciate the super chat, Lemansky.
You know the true answer to that question, Corey, why he's out there on the field at all?
I really don't know why he's out there on the
Because
field.
they're paying him money. Otherwise, he'd be sitting on the bench.
Why was Spencer Petras on the field? Because he was the best they had?
No.
Let me tell you something right now.
Spencer Petras, I told you this in the middle of the game. He's the best quarterback they've had since Nate Stanley.
You're forgetting the bad. You're forgetting the good old days. Of Spencer.
When has Cade McNamara ever played like 2020 Spencer Petras in an Iowa uniform?
2020 Spencer Petras. 2020 Spencer Petras was not good. Go back and watch the tape. That was a two-headed monster.
2024 Cade McNamara is not good. Watch the tape.
Cade. Okay. I think it's fair to say we can look at the tape and compare.
We could at least swap jerseys out, and you'd have no idea who was who.
I don't agree with that. Cade was horrible tonight. All right, he was horrible. But
He's been horrible in about 80% of his games.
I want to make sure I'm not defending Cade McNamara one iota.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying if you gave me Spencer Petras or Cade McNamara, I'm still taking Cade. The difference is, here's the difference. They have a proven guy behind him. They have a guy who's played at a high level behind him in Sullivan, and they won't give the poor dude a shot. They won't put him on the field.
Started for an entire year as a Big Ten quarterback, and they won't give him a play or barely give him a play.
Dude threw for well over 60% completion percentage at Northwestern, a Big Ten institution with mediocre talent around him. And
he brought his number 1 wide receiver or number 2 wide receiver with him.
Who's been the leader of this room.
He's not been the leader of the wide receiver room.
The last 2 weeks, Jacob Gill has been kind of MIA to some extent, but he's been the strongest leader in that room. And before last week, he was the best receiver on that. I don't know over now. Reese Vanderzie's playing well, which, by the way,
he's still the best wide receiver in the room. I still think.
Reese Vanderzee is our RTI Threads player of the game tonight. I thought these numbers look pretty modest on 3 catches, 47 yards, and a touchdown. But boy, Cade missed him twice in that first half where the one was just airmailed above RVZ, and the other one was thrown behind him on a simple crossing pattern.
Right.
He could have easily had 75 yards on at least 5 catches if Cade just puts the ball where he's supposed to. Talk about Reese Vanderzee, because he's really started to come into his own. He had that big flash in the pan week 1. These last 2 weeks, he's looked really good. He looks like, at least right now, the safest outlet for Cade McNamara, given his size and hands.
How many targets tonight did Gill have? I only remember 1 off the top of my head.
I'll try to grab that. No, let's see the one. Well, no, he had 2 because he had the one where he went out of bounds at the end of the game.
Right.
And then he had the other one where he had to extend. By the way, phenomenal efforts on both of those plays. I know he stepped out of bounds in the one, and it's unfortunate, but a phenomenal effort in that first half to extend out of bounds on a horrific Cade McNamara throw. That was a terrific effort by Jacob Gill. And he also had the carry. He had the one carry that ended up with nothing. He had one guy to beat, and was it Jordan Turner? Somebody hit him. It was read perfectly by Michigan State. So they did make some effort to get him the ball.
Yeah.
Here's another thing you can comment on, Corey. We're struggling on offense, as we've done in the past. I know of at least 2 examples in which we gained 9 yards on first down. And you know what I'm hoping for?
You want me to just pass away during this show, don't you, Don? I mean,
I just knew we needed a spark. My God, we got 2nd and 1.
Run the ball.
Wouldn't there be
Run
a
the ball.
chance we might go with a waist down?
No. I'll tell you what, maybe the dumbest, and I don't know who to blame on this, if that's Tim. I have a feeling Kirk's got his hand in the straw, but anyways, one of the plays was right before the 2-minute warning in the first half, and we're so concerned with getting an extra playoff before the 2-minute warning that we basically just waste a down. We come up to the line of scrimmage on a waste down opportunity, Don, and throw a quick pattern to Caleb Johnson, which falls incomplete on a hurry-up play, which didn't make any sense. Why we're so rushed to get that play in on a waste-down opportunity, and it falls incomplete. And then they had you mentioned the other one, and both of them. Well, the one was an incomplete pass that was not a waste-down. You don't count that as a waste-down. You're throwing a 1 yard out, and then the other one was a run for I believe it was for Caleb.
Yeah.
So, anyways, RTI Threads player of the game, Reese Vanderzee out of Rock Rapids. Do you want to take a quick moment before we get to our next caller to thank Iowa Smokehouse? In spite of the loss, they're with us, and they're providing you great snacking products with their steak bites, their sausage, their barbecue sauces. Everything is tasty, and it can be delivered right to your doorstep with the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. Shop now, iowasmokehouse.com, and follow them on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, that's iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. And Brad Van Meter down at State Farm on Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Give him a call for free insurance. Maybe he can give some insurance out to the Iowa defense because they need it after tonight. 515-256-6480. That's 515-656-6480 or online at bradvanmeter.com. Call him on Monday for an absolutely free quote. All right, let's go to, we have got Mr. Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com. And on 3, Tom, you're safe in the press box. You're from the Kirk Ferentz press conference. You were not nailed by tomatoes or vegetables by Hawkeye fans on the way up or down from the presser, so that's good. Good to see you here. Good to see that you're in safe shape. Don or Tom, what did you gather from hopefully some sober media availability with the headman?
Yeah, Kirk was pretty frank about just an uncharacteristic performance from the Iowa football team on a lot of fronts. I think the only thing that he felt good about was probably maybe some of the stuff on offense in the second half and Caden Weegan returning kickoffs. Beyond that, not a lot of bright spots. Uncharacteristically poor performance from the Iowa defense. You're not going to win many games giving up 470 yards of total offense. It's just and the tackling was bad. And he mentioned that more than once, that the tackling was just uncharacteristically bad. And I asked him if not having Sebastian Castro impacted that. No, I don't think so either, but I had to ask just to get his response. Didn't really have an answer for the revolving door at the corner position opposite of Jamari Harris. Did say Cohen Intringer hand issue. Doesn't seem like it's season ending kind of thing. I don't know exactly what's going on with him, but it didn't seem like it was just super minor. Castro's thing is an ankle. They think he's going to be back next week, but we'll see. So that's kind of the injury and KF thoughts coming out of this one.
I'm curious, as it relates to his demeanor. He looked very. Didn't you, Kyle, Don? Didn't you feel like Kirk looked defeated on the sideline?
Yes.
Maybe I'm just reading into facial expressions. He looked different today during that second half. Even before the game was final, he just looked beat. Tom, did you catch any of that in the press?
I couldn't, we're so far away. I can't really tell what he looked like. But the thing that I noticed was he was the first person off the field tonight. There was no lingering around. He didn't even wait for the team to swarm. He just got off the field. And I thought that was kind of surprising that he just he wanted to get off the field and just be done with this one and put it to bed. And hopefully they'll learn from this, because this is just They stepped in one tonight. They just did. This was what some of us worried about. I talked about it this week a little bit, that it just felt like potentially a trap game, but I thought that they would create enough turnovers with Childs. And they hung around in this game. That's the remarkable thing. As bad as the defense was, they would bow up and stop them and keep them hanging around, kicking field goals. But the offense was just awful in the first half. And then the defense was just, frankly, kind of bad, with the exception of bowing up a little bit in the red zone. I mean, it was bad the whole game.
Coach, do you have anything for Tom specific? I really don't even know where to go with. Well, I mean, unless there's something else that Kirk brought up. Don, do you have anything specific for Tom? He mentioned Castro and him being out, the impact there.
Tom, I guess I'll ask the question that Corey's already posed. A 2-point play, a critical 2-point play at the time.
I asked about it.
Okay, and what was the response?
I asked him, I said, you had Cade in there. You've used Sullivan in those goal line situations. And basically he said the play they had called was better for Cade.
Well, then don't call that play. Call a better play. That's my answer. Sorry, Don.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. But I did ask that question in the post game because I was curious too why Brendan Sullivan was not in there, and that was the answer he gave me.
I would like to know the logic behind that, Tom, though, because when Brendan is brought in for basically every goal line situation to this point, you have one chance, one play, your best play available, and you bring in somebody who's never in on goal line situations. That defies logic.
It does.
Just saying.
I thought it was a strange decision given that they've kind of committed themselves to Sullivan inside the 5, and why not just use him inside the 5 on a 2-point play? It's not like you have to rush him in because it's just, a 2-point play. It's kind of, you can kind of just run it. And it was
Look at it this way. I believe Sully's touchdown was on 3rd and goal at the 2. If I'm not mistaken. Does that sound right? 3rd and goal at the 2 is a lot like a 2-point play.
Yeah,
It almost is a 2-point play.
Yeah,
right?
it was.
Correct.
It was weird. It just, the whole night was weird, guys. The tackling just befuddled me. It seemed like they had not seen a mobile quarterback like Childs, and it kind of had them on their heels the whole night, where they just couldn't commit to tackling people. Even on that, Higgins made a great play in knocking the pass down, but it was more, I think, because he was afraid to commit to try and go right at the kid because he thought he might get dusted. I don't know how many times we had saw Iowa players grasping at air tonight and tackling,
Right.
and that just doesn't happen. It's just completely uncharacteristic, and it's not just because Castro was having. No, it didn't. Kirk I even asked him that. I said, does Mr. Castro impact things? And he was like, we're not. Basically, we're not making that excuse.
Right.
This is, which is good. Good on him.
I know Kirk's not a big picture guy, but they're basically done as it relates to the Big Ten race and as it relates to the college football playoff race. I know a lot of people thought it was fool's gold to even be talking about that heading into this week. I know that Kirk isn't thinking about that, but that's the reality of things. And now with the new 12-team playoff, when you play yourself out of that at this point of the season, you're going to get a lot of apathy the rest of the way, Tom. And assuming Cade McNamara is the starter next week, I don't even know, who do they play? Is it Northwestern next week?
Northwestern. Homecoming.
Homecoming. How do you? I'm assuming I know what you're going to say, but you could go ahead and tell me, how is Kirk going to approach this, other than business as usual?
Business as usual. Back to work. He was already pitching that theme post game. Just got to get back to work and move forward. So we'll see how they do that. He's got a problem on that opposite side of the field from Jamari Harris right now because he just doesn't seem to have it. He didn't play Sean Lee, so they've lost all confidence in him. It seems like he yanked TJ Hall and brought Nestor in. Nestor struggled. Zach Lutmer struggled tonight, I thought, and I had several missed tackles.
Are you saying, Tom, that Deshaun is 100% healthy?
He was on the sidelines in uniform with his helmet on.
He trotted off the field there at the end. I saw him out there.
So I assume when a guy's in uniform that he is healthy enough to play.
He wasn't on the injury report.
Yeah, he was not on the injury report. So we have to assume that he was healthy and a healthy scratch, I guess is how they would call it in sports vernacular today.
Well, let's talk about that corner position. You've heard me say before, there are ways in which that right corner, and people would say, wait a minute, that's the left corner. No, you identify the right corner as being on the right side of the defense. In other words, he's on the left side of the offense. He's aligned on the left side of the offense, but he's on the right side of the defense. That makes sense, Tom?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So if that's a problem, there are ways in which that right corner never has to be in single coverage. There are ways to do that. Maybe we need to do it.
Yep. There are. There's ways you can shade that safety over all the time.
And you don't have to play cover 2 all night either.
No, you don't.
That puts him as a flat defender, but you can also cloud the coverage in his direction. In other words, have him flat responsible, have the free safety, if that happens to be the next safety inside. The safeties, of course, play both left and right because they have different jobs in general. The free safety is generally on the weak side of the formation, and the strong safety on the strong side of the formation. But anyway, my point is you can cloud the coverage all day long or play cover 2 or play 2-man. If it's third and long, we've had decent success playing 2-man. But the point is, let's just commit that he's never, ever in one-on-one off coverage.
Yeah. You almost have to do it.
And that means there's a lot more single coverage on the other side, but we feel much better about Jamari being isolated than we do any of those right corners. That's the next step for Phil, is to actually tailor his calls to protect that right corner.
Were you surprised that wasn't done at halftime, Don?
Well, it's something he hadn't shown any interest in doing up until now. Not really.
No.
But we got so exposed tonight. You got to at least consider: do we ever have any of these guys on that side of the formation in single coverage? Maybe the answer is no. Let's not do that because they've proven that they can't tackle very well in space. And I do give Michigan State's receivers credit for doing a good job of trying to get away from them, and they did it. Not just receivers. Sometimes it was a running back coming out of the backfield. But in general, it was a ball thrown in their vicinity, and they needed to make a tackle, and they were very soft with their coverage to begin with, so that gave the guy a little extra room to operate. And we did a poor job of tackling any of them after the catch.
Yep. There was the one play from Aiden Childs. Tom, he's been to this point. I know he's a young guy, first year in this new system, although same head coach as what he had at Oregon State. They made him look like a Heisman guy on the one play where he's juking
he's
guys
really
out.
Talented.
He is very talented, but I'm just saying he has not shown any level of consistency to this point.
He has been really inconsistent all season and turned the ball over a lot. And he did tonight. He turned it over once, but in the past he's had multiple turnovers, but boy, he befuddled them. He really did.
Well,
And
he tried mightily to throw 2 picks tonight, but we didn't
he did.
cooperate.
He did. That one, Quinn Schulte should have had that one interception. I mean, I don't know how that's probably
Yes.
why he's playing safety and not receiver, right? That's what they always say.
I've always felt Schulte had pretty good hands.
So did I.
Yeah, in general, all the balls he had a chance to intercept, he's held on to them.
Did
Yeah.
he
I think
high school, Tom? Quinn?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think, just to kind of wrap up, put a bow on this, I think the question that's going to come to Kirk on Tuesday is it time to make a change at quarterback? I think that question is going to come.
Let me comment on one other aspect of tonight's game.
Yep.
We got a graphic look at the advantages of a mobile quarterback.
Yep.
Charles ran for 63 yards, I believe it was.
Yep.
And invariably, we could have tackled him, and we didn't. And he shook off one tackler and went on to the next guy. Maybe they gained 6 rather than 2 or whatnot. But beyond that, it gets into extending plays too, and finding open receivers that you really wouldn't have found except for the fact that you extended the play. You know, that's the other dimension that a mobile quarterback gives you.
Yeah.
I don't know
Tom,
can I just come in 1 second? Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things you talked about, Tom, them kind of being afraid to commit to tackling Childs and some of the other players.
Yeah.
One thing I thought, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I felt like Phil was afraid to dial up pressure on Childs tonight. Like, one of the big cover-ups for a bad corner or for poor cornerback play is to not have them have to guard a wide receiver for 10 seconds of play. I didn't think they sent pressure tonight. Like, I thought maybe the answer would be in the second half, or the adjustment would be, I know Phil doesn't send all out blitzes constantly, but some of that timely pressure that has come in at different points in good games. And I didn't see that tonight. That was one thing that really confused me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's really fair.
Yeah. During the game, Todd Blackledge did comment. He said, one thing I know that bothers Phil, he's concerned about playing a lot of man coverage because he feels like we need a lot of eyes on the quarterback because he's capable of shaking tackles. That's one reason he didn't do it, obviously.
Yeah.
I thought that the biggest concern for me was the tackling, just at the point of attack, because there were just so many times where it seemed like they would normally tackle a guy at the line of scrimmage or right near the line of scrimmage, and they were just getting shook, not wrapping up, and guys getting 5-6 more yards, or sometimes he just flat out misses and it's 10 yards down the field and it's a first down. And I knew I knew Michigan State would come out pretty strong because Jonathan Smith is really good in his first 15 or so. His script is always even against Ohio State and Oregon. He was going up and down the field early. He's a really good script guy. But they just couldn't stop him the whole game. It was 20-20. They were just cooking it the entire game. Their punter never came in the game.
Yeah. And to be completely clear, this is a Michigan State team that was outside the top 100 nationally in total offense heading into this game. Tom, safe travels back home. I know it's a hike. So everybody go over to HawkeyeReport.com. Follow Tom at Hawkeye Report on Twitter, and we'll look forward to hearing how you guys react to this. And I know it's a busy time for everybody covering the beat and covering Iowa, however they do so. So keep your stress load low, even though this is a weird time for Hawkeye football, because I know basketball's ramping up as well. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. Tom Kakert, HawkeyeReport.com. Thank you, Brody, for the super chat. Do appreciate that. Had that up earlier. And Jack says, Coach, why did we continue to play press on their wideouts in zone D and getting ran by their receivers?
I don't have a good explanation.
One of 100 questions that could be asked tonight.
I thought there were times early where, and I know sometimes you feel like early in games with Phil Parker coach defenses that they kind of, I mean, this is an Iowa defense that's known for being that quote unquote bend, don't break. They bent a lot in that first half. It's very similar. It's funny. It's almost eerily similar to what they did against Washington. Remember, they gave up a lot of yards early against Washington. It was all covered up, though, because they got pressure on what's his face late as the game went on and started to get big plays on the other side. They got a big return from Caden Weege in that game. They had a strip sack. That was really the difference. That was my key in this game to getting a comfortable lead early, is get a couple of turnovers. Quinn Schulte had a chance at one. They weren't able to convert. And then the other interception they had from Intringer, they weren't able to convert on that one either. And so anyways, going back to this comment, I felt like they were playing off the wideouts a little bit too much early, and which enabled Michigan State to get up and down the field quickly. However, they held them to 4 field goals. And when Iowa came out in that third quarter and scored that quick touchdown, you're thinking, it's 12-7. They got dominated in this first half, but Iowa's defense stymied up when they needed to. They bent, only gave up 12. But when you start giving up touchdowns in that second half, I'm no longer defending you, because you've not only given up yards now, but you're giving up scores. And you talked about missed tackles. Is Michigan State just full of these elite ball carriers? Like these guys who are just like striking Desmond Howard-esque Heisman moves and making our guys spin like tops.
It looked like they were covered in soap tonight or something.
Who are these guys that Michigan State all of a sudden has for an offense that ranked outside the top 100 heading into the game? I mean, they put their foot in the ground and Iowa guys just fall to the ground. I mean, where is this coming from, Don?
Well, a lot of it's poor tackling technique. We get overextended trying to attack a ball carrier in space. You know, you gotta chop your feet. You gotta not dive at the guy. You can't blow him up because he's too good an athlete for that. You just gotta get him on the ground and don't overextend.
Corey, thank you for the super chat as well. It's time to bench Cade, he says. Tackling this season is so bad. We'll wrap up. All right, before we get to our next caller, our call line, of course, sponsored by Iowa Smokehouse. A reminder, I know it's hard to want to support anything when your team loses, but check out RTI Threads because they are also involved heavily with baseball and basketball, both the men and the women. Shop it all at rtithreads.com. Football athletes including Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer, and more. Again, that's www.rtithreads.com. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. You're watching Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Ryan Glick, co-founder and CEO of Groove. And if you're a real estate professional, I have something I think you're going to be interested in. We've developed a platform that's transforming the way deals are prospected and managed in the real estate world. With Groove, you can organize real estate data in one place and share real estate deals with just one click. Join other real estate pros and reclaim up to 90% of your time. Head over to letsgroove.com/signup and start your free trial today.
Chasmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Chasmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Chasmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at chasmium.com. Chasmium, where sports technology sparks victory. We are back here, Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson, and we're going to go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, and we have, let's see who's up next in the queue. We've got Thomas here with us. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, what's up?
Not a whole lot.
Why are we so reluctant to use a quarterback that can move the pocket, that can run? I mean, the last time we had a Big Ten championship, we had a quarterback that could run, right? Well, one of the times. You know, Brad Banks, one of my favorites of all time at Iowa. He could run.
CJ Beathard was pretty mobile.
Yeah, CJ was mobile. I
Well,
mean,
no,
so why are we
I don't know.
so reluctant
We don't have
to
the answer because
utilize a quarterback?
you're preaching to the choir, Tom, and Don will say this because Don, he just brought it up to Kakert here a minute ago. The one thing that Iowa is not doing is utilizing the mobility of Brendan Sullivan, and it's great to have him as a goal line threat, but then you take him out on a very important 2-point conversion attempt. That was just weird. And why not play him inside between the 20s if you're going to play him inside the 5s? Don, do you have an explanation to why Kirk might be reluctant this day and age in 2024, especially when you watch guys like Aiden Childs? And I know Brendan Sullivan's not Aiden Childs, but why on earth, when you struggled offensively for so long, and they have a new OC here who I'm sure would be, I have a hard time imagining Tim Lester would not like to utilize Brendan Sullivan's skill set. I mean, we'll never know because Lester will never say that he is not calling that shot. But Don, any reason why Kirk's not doing that right now other than it's just what he's comfortable with and he's a stubborn mule in some regards?
Well, there's some history that supports the fact that we avoid at all costs the quarterback controversy. You can go back to the quarterback you mentioned earlier that's playing elsewhere now. And there were any number of people that thought he wasn't the best quarterback, and yet he always seemed to have a lock on the job.
So
to the point where nobody else even really had a chance to prove otherwise. So
yeah,
I don't have a good explanation because, personally, that position should be treated as any other position as far as I'm concerned. You need to get the best player to play the most at any and all positions. And if you're not sure who the best player is, then you need to find out in battlefield conditions. Need to find out.
Yeah. So I have two other things that I actually wanted to mention. So with Beth Getz, and you saw the announcement that she put out, right? Of where we're at. We're 4-2, competing for a Big Ten championship. Well, that's no longer the case. I'm wondering if at some point is she going to have to get involved, because clearly Ferentz does not have the fortitude to make the change.
She's not getting involved.
And then the other thing is we've lost 3 players to the transfer portal in the last week and a half.
They're going to lose
how
more.
much. Yeah, and how much of that is affecting the team right now? Because like you said, Kirk looked defeated today.
Yeah, but those guys weren't playing. Those guys weren't playing. Devin Hilson was playing on special teams. Caleb Brown was getting some snaps, but had 1 catch on the year, and Le'Shawn had been hurt. That's not why any of this happened.
It just, to me, it's just big picture wise.
Beth is not stepping in at 4-3 for a guy who, whether people like it or not, is fringe Hall of Fame right now. If he can get his winning percentage high enough, I don't know. 4-3, it probably isn't, right, Don? 4-3, it's not above the threshold, but
and it's not. For me, it's not about stepping in. Is this the time she has to have a word with Kirk and say what's going on?
No. Kirk's the most powerful man in that athletic department still. Whether you or I like.
My question would be, when's the last time anybody in that athletic department had any kind of conversation with Kirk about any of this? Like
probably Bowlesby, very early, right, Don?
Yeah.
I'm sure Kirkwood didn't have any power when he first got hired there, but I mean, go back to maybe 2000. I don't know. 3.
And Bob Bowlesby was a man of action, I would say, compared to
whether you liked him or not.
ADs.
Whether you liked him or not, he was a unique personality, but he was a guy of action. Yes.
Well, I have watched Iowa football since 1999, and right now, at this point, I'm looking more forward to women's basketball, Iowa women's basketball. At least they're competing for championships.
Well, Tom, I appreciate you calling in, sir, and We'll hopefully talk to you at better times next time.
Yeah, thanks, Corey.
Thanks, Tom. So here's the deal. They're done.
Yeah.
This team's done as far as goal. Like, here's what's sad and also not sad at the same time, Don. They lost 3 games. They shouldn't have lost to Iowa State. They were up 13-0. They blow this game. It's a horrible loss. It's a bad loss. I'll stand by what I said. This is not a good Michigan State team. This is a Michigan State team that just now got to 4-3 and nearly lost to FAU. Statistically, they're outside the top 100 in total offense, outside the top 100 in rush offense. Both those categories, they were exceptional against what we thought to be their excellent Iowa defense. Iowa has played their way out of any consideration for the Big Ten championship game in Indy, Don, and they're now outside the conversation for a playoff spot. Besides pride, with the emphasis on the playoff, what do fans that expected that heading into the year, expected to be in contention late with that schedule, with all the seniors that were returning, and with the expanded playoff, how do you encourage fans to not become apathetic right now? Because a lot of fans are looking at this and saying, we're done. We got 5 games left, but the season's over in my view. I know you don't view it that way, but how do you comfort those that are feeling apathetic already at this point at 4-3?
Well, at this point, they're probably glad we're playing Nebraska rather than Indiana.
But what does it matter?
If
they win out and they go 9-3, what does it matter? This sounds terrible, but what does it matter? What does it matter if they go 9-3 and win and go to the Quickfire Bowl featuring Kyle's papa? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. Now all of a sudden the Badgers look pretty formidable too.
Mm-hmm.
So the sad part of it all is a win over all of the remaining opponents is going to leave a lot of football experts saying, so what? Let them really count for much. That's the way a lot of self-proclaimed experts would respond.
Like
so what? None of them are very good.
Well, but I don't care if they're playing Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. It's not going to get them anywhere but a bowl game, Don. And bowl games don't matter in the grand scheme of things anymore. They're not important to people. And unless there's absolute chaos at the top of the Big Ten, they're out of even tiebreaker scenarios now with 2 losses.
Right.
Because Ohio State and Oregon aren't losing. I would be shocked if either one of those teams. Maybe Ohio State drops a game, like maybe they lose to Michigan, but I don't think they're going to drop another game. And Oregon looks like they're possibly going to run the table. So Iowa's played their way out of this. Jack, thank you for the super chat. Tom, they look like they didn't expect any of that tonight, like they had just prepared incorrectly. Corey, thank you for the super chat. It's time to bench Cade, and tackling this season so bad no one will wrap up. I think we had that earlier, but do appreciate that, Corey. And do you think after this Cade performance they start Sullivan, or do we just keep seeing Cade? Don, it's time to throw your guess in the box.
Can I quote you first, Corey?
Sure.
Corey, you know better.
I know better, but Don, do you know better? Is there any chance we see Sullivan starting next week?
I don't think so.
No.
And let me just tell you, somebody sent this to me on Twitter, and they wanted me to throw this into the hat tonight. This is from Brandon Hout. He sent this via DM. He said, biggest topic for post-game, assuming Iowa does not win. This was, of course, earlier in the night. Now that they're 4-3 in the season with no playoff possibility and no Big Ten possibility, might I add, is it time to sit Cade? That question it's a great question from Brandon, but it's irrelevant because it's not how Kirk looks at this. Kirk is not looking at this like, well, the season's over, we might as well just play for our guy next year. Even though that might be the smart thing to do and the logical thing to do, Kirk's not doing that. He is not like in a certain way, perhaps that's why Jonathan Smith has stuck with Aiden Childs, because he's had a guy in Tommy Schuster behind him who won a lot of games and threw for a lot of yards at the Missouri Valley Conference level at North Dakota. And he is stuck with a guy who was in the red with turnovers, who was below 56% completion percentage on the season, perhaps because he's playing the long game? That's a fair question from Brandon, but Don, there's no chance that Kirk does that, right? He's not going to look at this and say, well, we got 5 games left. We're out of the playoff race. We're out of the Big Ten race. We might as well go with the guy who we want to start next season and give up on Cade. He's not going to do that.
No, I don't think he'll do that.
Should he do that? Should that be a consideration, Don?
Well, if you want to generate more interest in Iowa,
Corey,
if you want to generate extra interest with Iowa football, have your fans show up looking forward to seeing the comparison between two quarterbacks.
Yeah, but this isn't just about generating interest right now. Isn't it also about playing the long game and discouraging a guy like Sullivan from transferring at the end of the year? Like when you say, okay, you know what? We're out of the race this year. Even if I did think Cade was the best option, I'm going to go with the guy who's going to be the best option next year. So I'm going to play Marco and I'm going to play Brendan and I'm going to see what I got. Fans would like that, but it would also potentially set Iowa up for better things ahead offensively next year. Am I wrong?
Kirk didn't bench a quarterback that Utah Tech benched.
Yes, but
Utah Tech benched the same guy that Kirk kept trotting out.
They went to the Big Ten championship game last year.
Nobody cares. He threw for 78 yards a game and threw a ton of picks.
It doesn't matter. Okay, this is a totally different scenario. Okay,
First of all, I know it is, but
they have a guy in Brendan Sullivan who is primed to be the guy next year.
Yeah,
and they also have a roster that's going to be depleted after all these players leave. So at some point, in my opinion, you have to start looking at how do we gear up for different times, because this is sort of unprecedented what they're going to be heading into next season.
Well, I mean, one of the things I worry about too, or wonder about, and I don't know, you can chime in, Corey, but if Kirk's not, say Kirk has in his head he's not coming back next year, does he care about next year?
Wow, we're throwing everything out tonight. I love it.
I don't know. Is it a ridiculous thing to say? Does he care about next year if he's not coming back? They're losing like what? What are they losing? 18 out of 22 starters?
If Kirk had in his mind that this is his last year, he's going to hang it up. Why would you just put your head down and go with Cade McNamara, whose ceiling is here, when you have a guy like Marco or like Brendan who's mobile and maybe can excite some fans?
That's what he does. Because it's what he does. He doesn't at this stage in his career, he is not going to go against what he's done his entire career. There is nobody. This is the whole problem. There is nobody there. From the outside, it looks like there's nobody in the media. There's nobody on the team. There's nobody on the coaching staff that can change his procedures and what he does. At least that's how it looks. I mean, I don't know anything, but that's how it looks. It doesn't look like there's anyone in an Iowa administration that can change his mind. I mean, he's in a state with no NFL team, with no MLB team, the fans are going to show up. They're going to pay for tickets. They're going to watch the games. It's been enabling for years.
You know what I would do? And Chase, appreciate the super chat. He says, top 5 worst loss in Kirk's career. If we don't make a bowl game, do you think any pressure gets on Kirk after the season or going into next season? Unfortunately, no, he's not going to be under any pressure. He could go 6-6 this year. And, well, he says if we don't make a bowl game, they're going to make a bowl game.
Yeah, they're going to make
I have could you imagine them going 5-7?
And beating Northwestern and then losing out or something?
Well, just a reminder. PJ went 5-7 last year and went to a bowl game.
Yeah,
that's true. So they may have to lose.
Because of their academics, he'll have you now.
So I guess my point in bringing this up is that he could go 6-6, 5-7. He's under no pressure from the AD next season. He's not getting fired, folks. No, he's not getting fired.
He's more likely to fire the AD than the AD is to fire him.
All right. Appreciate everybody. We're going to wrap this thing up. No, I'm kidding. We're not wrapping it up. Don just shook his head like, no, we're not. No, we're not. All right. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. Thank you for calling Iowa Post Game with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. Hey, Don, question for you. Well, first of all, really good news on the kick return team. Weegens returning kicks like crazy. But, Don, as an evaluator of talent and quarterbacks, would you evaluate quarterbacks on how you saw them practice and play? Or how much would you evaluate their statistical performance? And with that being said, of the 18 quarterbacks starting in the Big Ten, where would you rank Cade McNamara?
I haven't seen all 18 quarterbacks enough to comment on all of them. But it's safe to say that there are any number of quarterbacks in the league that are doing more for their team than Cade's been able to do for ours.
So
it's not all his fault, but certainly part of it is.
What's the biggest part of that, if I may piggyback on the caller? Because it seems like Iowa's just had a horribly unfortunate streak of quarterback play. Is that what it is? Because, and I'm not about to blame Tim Lester, because first of all, Cade was brought in before Tim Lester, but like Petrus, Padilla, Deacon Hill, Deuce Hogan, who's, hurt now, but ended up transferring to New Mexico State and struggling. Carson May, who's not playing at Abilene Christian. They can't get a quarterback with a pulse in here, Don. And then they bring in a guy who, seemed to be okay at Michigan, and boy, the fans are rioting. Is that a system thing? Is it just a lack of eye for talent, or what is it?
Well, part of our problem is we don't have enough receivers that can scare the defensive backs. You need receivers that from time to time can take the top off the defense.
I saw a lot of open receivers that got missed today, Don. I saw a lot of there were plays to be had on the field tonight, and Cade just missed them. And in their defense, in Gill's defense, Vanderzee's defense, Anderson's defense, this didn't look like a wide receiver problem tonight.
So Don, I'm going to ask the question differently. Don, where do you think Kirk Ferentz and Cade McNamara 1 through 18 in Big Ten quarterbacks? Now, I know you can't speak for Kirk, but whatever you say, I'm going to have an answer because I'm going to drill this down because I have an answer.
How is he supposed to answer that? How is Don supposed to answer how Kirk would rate Cade?
Okay, Corey, here's how I'm going to answer this.
Okay.
Second quarter, Iowa has the ball on the 41-yard line of Michigan State, trailing 12-0. 4th and 5. Kirk took Cade McNamara out of the game and traded Cade for a 58-yard field goal. That tells me all I need to know about how much Kirk Ferentz has in faith of Cade McNamara converting a 4th and 5. He kicked him out of the game he didn't punt. He kicked him out of the game to try a 58-yard field goal. Riddle me that.
I think there are better examples that you could use than that, because Drew Stevens can make it from 65 and he's very narrowly missed that kick. Very narrowly missed that kick.
Has he yet? What's the longest field goal?
He hasn't been asked to kick long. He has not been given 58-yard field goals to kick. But I'm telling you right now, the kid can make from 60 plus.
What's the longest field goal he's ever made in his career?
It doesn't matter. He hasn't kicked field goals of 58 plus.
It does matter.
No, it doesn't, because he's not the one calling it.
Kirk took Cade out of the game to try a 58-yard field goal.
Okay. Well,
Anyway,
That was a
what-
good decision on Kirk's part because
yeah,
Corey's
Don-
correct.
Don, back to
Corey's
you.
correct. Our kicker has a
When you were
chance to make a
coaching,
kick
when
from
you were
58
coaching,
yards.
At what point did you look at your statistical performance of your offense or your quarterback and make decisions on the field based on the statistical past performance of the quarterback or the offense? Or did you always go by feel? Because Kirk's feel tonight was, I'll trade the 4th and 5 at Michigan State 41 for a 58-yard field goal. Where did you trade off statistical performance and history with what you were seeing on the field?
I'm going to make that exact same decision. I'm going to kick the 58-yard field goal.
I think you're on the wrong horse. You're going the right direction, but you're on the wrong horse getting there, because we're not going to argue. I'm not going to argue with you, caller, about Kirk's faith or lack thereof in his quarterbacks or his strategy or whatever. But I just don't think you're giving Drew Stevens nearly enough credit. And in that situation, I wouldn't have had confidence in Iowa converting a 4th and 5 either. I'd have had more confidence in Drew Stevens making a 58-yard field goal. And you heard me say after the Iowa State loss that I had more confidence in Drew Stevens kicking from 67 than I would have had in Cade McNamara throwing a Hail Mary. To me, it's the same thing. And they gave him a chance at the 58-yarder, and he missed it by a yard or two.
I would point to the lack of use of waste downs in the past as a better indication of lack of faith in that decision. I would have kicked the field goal too.
Sure.
I'll just leave with this. This is a sad indictment of Iowa's offense, that you would trade the odds of a 58-yard field goal. I don't care who's kicking it. There's a ton of guys in the NFL that make from 58 in the NFL, 40% is probably an amazing performance. So for Iowa to trade off in college a 4th and 5 for a 50, this is no indictment of Drew Stevens.
Well, let me just
It's
remind
an
you
indictment of the lack of faith of the Iowa offense and how absolutely just
Let me just remind you
Kirk
that
has no faith in it.
Michigan State sent out their field goal kicker for 2 55-yard field goals tonight. Very close to what Drew Stevens was sent out for. So to act like it's unheard of for a coach to do that, Jonathan Smith of Michigan State did that with his field goal kickers, with his guy tonight. So
For the record, 58 yards is 3 yards longer than 55, and he was 1 of 2 from 55.
3 yards.
Not 2 of 2.
His kick missed by we're just talking in circles, but his kick missed by a yard, and it was wide right. It wasn't short. That's all I'm saying. It had the distance from 65. Okay. Distance is not the problem for Drew at 58.
Not at all.
A
Smith
kick for Drew
wouldn't hesitate to let Kim try a 58-yard field goal.
Here's the problem.
Hold on, caller. A kick from 58 yards for Drew Stevens is equal for many kickers of a kick 45 to 48 yards. He's got a gifted leg, whether you like that or not. He does.
Hey, Corey. Drew has never made a field goal longer than 51 yards at Iowa.
I don't care.
That's not true. He made a 54-yarder against Northwestern as a freshman.
He never made one.
He made a 54-yarder.
He made a 54-yarder against Northwestern in the game that they won after, after getting blown out by Ohio State. They went home and won 33-13. He made a 54-yarder as a freshman.
Terrific.
So you're wrong. You're wrong.
It was good. That kick was good from 60. Go watch the film.
Why are we arguing about this? Why are we arguing about
because
Drew Stevens?
Don won't answer why
all right.
He won't rank where Creed is.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to our next caller. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to continue going in circles. You can be upset all you want, but I'm not going to sit here and just argue in circles.
That
Do
wasn't
people
that
just-
wasn't the one to call out.
No,
That wasn't the
there's
decision to
so
call
many
out.
other things you can focus in on and call out on for Kirk and his decision making. How about, can we bring up something else? And I tweeted about it at the end of the half, Don. And maybe you're going to tell me that I'm way off on this. But how about this? And this, I'll just read you my tweet verbatim. Why would you not burn a timeout with over 20 seconds left in the first half on 4th down? It's 4th down and 2. Michigan State comes out for a 55-yard field goal. Iowa has 2 timeouts remaining. They're down 12-0. And let me make this very clear. I retweeted this and I explained the 55-yard field goal, which was later missed by Jonathan Kim. Had Iowa called a timeout, I went back and looked at the tape. Hawkeyes would have had the ball at the 37-yard line with about 20 seconds to go, down 12-0. And if they decided not to ice the kicker, they would have had an extra timeout. Even if they chose to ice the kicker, you still got 20 seconds left with the ball. Why would you not call a timeout in that situation? Why would you allow Michigan State to drain the clock down under 5 seconds when you're down 12-0?
That's a bigger indictment of his lack of faith in Cade than the decision to kick the field goal by Drew Stevens.
But that doesn't even make sense. If you have faith for Drew Stevens from 60, why wouldn't you want your offense to run one pass play of 20, 25 yards and maybe you get in field goal range for Drew?
Yeah, give it a try.
Explain that decision.
The saddest part about that, Corey, is with all the clock mismanagement, do you think that even crossed Kirk's mind? Like, is that like that's not something that he's sitting there thinking, oh, I'm not going to give the offense a chance. I think he just let the clock go down. Like, I don't even know if we can give him that much credit.
Did you think about that when it happened, Don? Why are you allowing the 2 timeouts? They ended up using one to ice the kicker, but why carry one of the timeouts into somebody on Twitter said, well, if they call a timeout, then Michigan State could go for it. What? No. It's 4th and 2. They're up 12-0. They're kicking the field goal. And if they want to go for it, fine. I'd rather take my chances on 4th and 2 as a defense than on the leg of Jonathan Kim. And he happened to miss the field goal. But Don, why would you not burn a timeout there and allow your offense, regardless of if the kick goes through or not, to get the ball back? Maybe it's a return for Weegan. Maybe it's a big run for Caleb. Or maybe you get the ball at the 37 and take one shot over the middle to try to get in field goal range for your kicker.
You bring up a good point.
Did you not think about it when it happened, Don?
Yes, I did think about it.
All right. Do you have an explanation as to why you would not do that?
No.
Can I clip this little portion out and post it this week? DC Hawkeye says the last 5 years, Iowa was at the bottom in the division. Was at the bottom in Division I for offense. Beth had to make him release Brian. The damage was done by nepotism. The Roosters are now home to roost for a few years to come. We are in a ditch, says DC Hawkeye. Appreciate the super chat, DC Hawkeye. Always a pleasure to hear from you and appreciate your support of the show. This is a very interesting time, guys. Don, you know this, but Kyle, you're just a fellow fan. This is an interesting time for Iowa because they're out of the playoff race. I mean, officially out of the playoff race. Regardless of what people said, Kyle, heading into this game, they were still in the playoff race. They were still in the Big Ten championship race. They are, by all accounts, out of both. So if that's what matters to you, the season is shot from that perspective. And now you head into next season. Who do they lose next season? Should we run through the list real quick for everybody?
Pull it up.
Cade. Go ahead and pull it up. You need to tell me who they lose up front. Cade, Castro, Fisher, Higgins, Jackson, Lachey. Defense, they lose Black. They lose, Schulte. They lose Harris. I mean, I know I'm missing guys.
Richmond and Jones as well.
They lose their center. They lose their left tackle. What other guys up front on that offensive line?
Is Connor Colby done, or does he have one more year?
I think he's done because didn't he play over 4 games his freshman year?
Yeah.
He's gone.
Luke
don't
Lachey, did you mention Lachey?
have one more year.
Are you counting KJ as a loss or not?
Yeah, probably.
Yes, AJ goes to the pros.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what that team is going to be like. That's why it's a fair question to say, is Kirk going to return next year? And the schedule is a bear, Don.
They bring Penn State and Oregon to Kinnick and go to Wisconsin, Nebraska. I mean, they've got 5 very losable games next year.
And Southern Cal, if I'm not mistaken.
And Southern Cal, yeah, they go to Southern Cal.
They go to
What? I mean, okay, with all those guys leaving, can you say that they're going to win that game, Corey?
Okay. The what game? The Southern Cal game?
Yeah, going to USC.
I would, if all those guys were coming back, I wouldn't. I know that Southern Cal's lost some games this year, but I expect them to be really good next year because that's a program with a lot of money and a lot of history, tradition. Yeah, I'm looking at
that's not even to count, by the way, how many guys they could lose in the portal. Because, like, you know, we've talked about briefly, Corey, about like somebody like a Xavier Wampa. I mean, he's going to look around next year on the defense and the offense and go, "I'm alone here." Like, this is not a team that can win anything.
Let me actually read you. This isn't the schedule in order, but let me actually let me pull this up here. Let me actually read you Iowa's Big Ten schedule for 2025. Not even Big Ten schedule. I'll go the whole schedule from start to finish. So they play Albany and UMass. Those are their 2 guaranteed games. At Iowa State, home against Indiana. You know, Michigan State that just beat Iowa. They play them again. Minnesota, Oregon, Penn State, at Nebraska, at USC, at Wisconsin, at Rutgers. I mean, that right there, USC, Oregon, Penn State. A lot of people would say those are almost guaranteed losses. Now, they're not, but a lot of people would say those are almost guaranteed losses. When's the last time we've looked at an Iowa schedule and said they've got almost 3 guaranteed losses? And then you're not talking about the Indiana, the at Iowa State, the at Wisconsin,
at Nebraska.
They may limp. I mean, they could limp to 6-6 next year.
There's a scenario that plays out where they lose all these players and they don't go to a bowl game next year, I think.
I wonder. Yeah, got to wonder about Kirk's future. So let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name. He's going to have to help me with it.
It's Saurabh.
Saurabh?
Yep.
For full transparency, Corey, for our viewers that have no idea who this gentleman is, Saurabh grew up 4 doors down from me on our neighborhood street, and if this game was about 8 years ago, we would have been out throwing a football in the backyard by the middle of the second quarter. So
exactly. Yep. Kyle and I have been bonded through our misery that is Iowa football.
Well, we appreciate you being here in spite of the circumstances, and you are a Hawkeye fan?
I am a Hawkeye fan. I live in Minnesota now, but I've stayed loyal, unfortunately, for my well-being, but I am a Hawkeye fan.
So what did you think about tonight?
I mean, same things that everybody else has pretty much said already. I guess the first place I would go is it's unbelievable to me that Cade McNamara is still our quarterback. I mean, there are plays where I legitimately think back to playing backyard football, and I'm like, I can make these throws. There was one where he rolled out, he's on the run, Van Der Zee's coming across on like a 5-yard drag, and he just dumps it into the ground. He doesn't have the arm strength to get the ball to Seth Anderson on a deep crosser across the middle of the field. I mean, this is a guy that took a team. I suppose he took them to the playoff, but I don't understand how he's a Big Ten starting quarterback, especially not at Iowa. And then you bring up Sullivan being our backup, and just it would be nice to get to see him in a game. At this point, honestly, I've come to the fact where I don't want to see Sullivan, because if he is better, which I would expect him to be, because I don't think you can be worse than what Cade McNamara is showing, unless you're maybe Deacon Hill. But I almost don't want to see Sullivan because it would hurt me to see him come in and take our offense to a level that I think we could go to if he is better than McNamara, which I think he probably is, just based off the mobility he would bring. So I'm almost at that point where I'm cool with the season just being canceled. Call it what it is. And
imagine. This is a good point, Corey. Imagine Sullivan actually does trot out there at some point in the next couple of weeks and just lights it on fire. Imagine that.
Let me just say something real quick because I want to piggyback off your comment, sir.
Sure.
So, Don, can I ask you real quick, and I want your honest evaluation here, because one thing that I've noticed with Cade, it's become a bit of a trend. He appears to me to be incapable of doing something very specific that really has nothing to do with how fast he is, how big of an arm he has, and that is his inability to throw when he's outside the pocket. Has anybody else noticed that? When he gets flushed outside of the pocket, he cannot make a...
Yep. Completely agree.
Don, I mean, C.J. Beathard was a great example of a guy who made so many throws on the run, flushed outside the pocket. Nate Stanley did a nice job. Even though he was a big guy, flushed outside the pocket, he could make throws on the run. Cade is as inaccurate of a quarterback as I've seen when he gets flushed outside the pocket.
It seems like a lot of the time he throws the ball behind the receiver, especially on drive routes, over routes, routes in which he's maybe rolling out or flushing in that direction. So often the ball is thrown behind the receiver. And of course, that's where the defender is, giving chase.
I'll give you two quick examples, not to cut you off, Don, but Ohio State, he rolls out of the pocket, has a wide open Caden Weegan, 35 yards down the field, underthrows Caden Weegan. And then today he gets flushed out. He rolls right. And I believe it was a designed rollout, I think. And notice they've run naked a lot less. They've run naked a lot less with Cade. Am I wrong on that this year, Don, with Tim Lester?
Well, maybe less today than certainly we've seen in earlier games this year.
Well, today he runs out right and has, I thought, a pretty simple throw to Jacob Gill, and that's the one where Gill has to stretch out of bounds to make. He made a phenomenal attempt, but there's another one where he's not even close to making that completion on a throw that, he's not standing in the. It just seems like he is very uncomfortable when he's out of the pocket. It's not just about his ability to get forward, to get positive yardage on the ground with his legs, but it's the ability to make a play with his arm when he's outside the pocket. He doesn't seem to have that right now.
Yeah, he just got issues with accuracy both in and out of the pocket, really.
And I would even say in the pocket, maybe this is a question for you, Coach. I have seen him every single game. If there's even a semblance of a rush coming at him, back foot. And he doesn't have the arm strength or the arm talent to be throwing off his back foot that much. Like maybe you got a guy like Jordan Love who sometimes falls into the just I have that much talent, so I'm going to throw off my back foot. But Cade McNamara can barely get the ball 30 yards. And at least maybe I'm seeing this wrong, but I feel like he does not stick in the pocket well enough, and he just loves to float onto that back foot. I don't know at what point as a coaching staff do you I assume they see it, but how much do you talk about that and try to get him to just stick in there?
It's hard to blame him after all the injuries too.
Well, the really good ones in general, they transfer their weight to their front foot. They're pretty much defiant of pass rush. They don't want to compromise their throwing motion simply because there might be a little pressure. So the really good ones step into the throws without regard to pass rush, really. That's just who they are. They step into their throws. They transfer their weight. The ball doesn't sail.
Agreed. Yeah. I completely agree with that.
I'm going to make a comment on the screen. I want to know if any of you guys caught this today. When Cade came off the field after the opening drive of the second half, did anybody do some lip reading on what he turned to the crowd and said?
No.
He turned to the crowd and appeared to jaw at them and say, "It's a new half expletive." After one drive and after that hideous first half, he turns and that's what he does. He turns to the crowd and says, "It's a new half, B." And I'm just sitting there like, it's not it. No, that's not it.
I missed that.
Yeah.
It'll be on Twitter, Corey. You'll see it at some point.
Great. I can't wait.
Glad he finally gets a touchdown throw, and that's what he thinks.
You, as a competitor and Sarah played college athletics too, like on any level, when you are struggling like that, you don't do that. I mean, you don't do that. Anybody that's competed anything, when you're struggling like that, you don't do that.
And if you do, you better be able to back it up. And
you better. You're putting yourself on the hot seat.
Yeah. I guess the only other thing I wanted to talk about before I leave it off to someone else was I'm not sure if I've seen a worse defensive performance from one person than Nestor had today in a long time of watching Iowa football. I couldn't believe that he was still out there after he gave up that touchdown. I couldn't believe. I mean, he was literally just falling to his knees time after time. The route where the guy kind of initially came inside, I think it was more of a comeback route, and you see Nestor bite on the first bit, then just sell out trying to get back, and then just get fully turned around when the receiver broke into his comeback. I know people have asked this, but if Deshaun Lee wasn't hurt, I know we've struggled on that side of the field all year with TJ Hall, Deshaun Lee, but I even with TJ Hall giving up big plays, at least he can make a tackle. Nestor was just eating turf the whole day, barely touching guys, and I couldn't believe it.
Deshaun Lee hasn't given up that many big plays. So just to be very clear, like
Agreed. Yeah.
It was mentioned earlier, yeah, he gave up a couple of plays against Ohio State, gave up the one play last week to Washington's best wide receiver on a beautiful throw from their quarterback over the shoulder in the corner of the end zone. But I actually thought, and I texted this to you, Kyle, during the game, I've seen all these guys play now, and I think Deshaun Lee right now is their best, most consistent option. I think he's their best cover corner other than Jermari Don. Are you surprised that Deshaun didn't get time?
I assumed he was injured.
Yeah.
I did too. Well,
I would I'd be curious. I would think the media would have asked that question. We didn't talk to Tom about it specifically, but why would that not be asked if you're the media? Yeah, I have no idea.
It sounded like Tom said that he saw him in uniform and expected that he wasn't injured. So
I saw him trotting off the field at the end of the game with his teammates in full uniform.
Yeah.
Well, somehow he found his way into the doghouse. Not sure how. I think today we proved this. Maybe our two best candidates at right corner are the same two that were 1 and 2 on the depth chart to start the whole season. We're back to Deshaun Lee and I believe TJ Hall because the other guys failed miserably.
Well, it might be time to start running another Tegan Davis or maybe Jalen Watson. I'm almost surprised Jalen didn't get some time because they've liked him so far. He's young, but Phil hasn't been afraid to trot a freshman out there in the past.
Well, I think my solution's better. We simply have to call the game to protect the right corner because we don't want him in single coverage.
Yeah, there's none of them that can be put in single coverage. And however, if Lee has found his way into the doghouse, I'm sure John Nestor, after his 16 missed tackles, is now even further in the doghouse.
You would think so.
I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. Spinning
Kyle
like
and I were texting after the game, and we both said the same thing. It's just shocking performance. Another tough year to be in Iowa
I was
And,
more shell shocked watching this game than anything else. Watching the defense, like I genuinely watched most of the game just like this. Like, what am I watching? Who is this? Like, there are some games like to me the offense, when the offense was bad, it made me upset because it felt like there were some simple answers and there were some things that were so obviously wrong. But like watching that defense tonight, it was just jarring. It's like,
and what's jarring about it especially was that this is the first loss of the season. You got to get back on your feet. But this did them in.
Yeah.
There is no recovering from a perspective of your big goals. Their big goals are shot. There's no more West Division that you can hope to back your way, to the top. There's no West Division anymore. You're done at this point, and I think that's what's most frustrating. Is it Sourab? Sourab. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get that for a while. So call in again sometime.
Right.
Appreciate you calling in, and keep sticking with them. That's all I can
Definitely.
say.
Thanks for having me on, Kyle. Good to see you.
Really
good to see you, sir.
Thank you for being here, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Let's go to, before we get to our next caller, how about these numbers? Cade McNamara, 11 of 23, $150, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. How would you evaluate Cade as a whole today, Don?
Well, third quarter was solid compared to the other three, I guess. I can say that.
He made a couple of I made the comment during halftime. I hadn't seen a real good throw from him all day. He had one throw down the seam to Lachey in that first half, but in general, I didn't see much of anything good I liked in that first half from Cade. And yeah, I had a nice couple of drive. Well, really one. The drive where he had the touchdown throw to Vanderzee, I think, was his best. But yeah, I mean, below 50% passing and just a horrendous. What happened on the interception, Don?
It's hard to explain. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody busted a route.
Okay.
I don't know what he saw. It's rare when the ball goes directly to a defender.
Well, okay. The thought I had too, Coach, even if Lachey continued that route, that throw was a bad idea, right?
Right.
Even if Lachey continued the route, it was a terrible idea.
I remember something you told me, Don, that Hayden would have said when Deacon Hill threw an interception in the red zone, in the end zone. After one look at it, Hayden would have looked at you and said, "Get him out." Would he have done that? Would Hayden have done that today after seeing that throw from Cade?
Probably yes. He would say, maybe not get him out. He would have said, "I've seen enough."
I've seen
There you go.
Which is a longer version of get him out.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to our next caller, do want to take a quick moment to thank Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Mentioned him earlier, but if you need a quote on insurance, and certainly we all need good homeowners insurance, maybe it's renter's insurance, auto insurance, give them a call. Brad and his team, they're all Hawkeye fans, and in spite of the team struggles, they're going to be loyal to you no matter what. www.bradvanmeter.com, or you can call him at 515-256-6480. His office is down on Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Again, that's Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm in Des Moines, 515-256-6480. Also, if you've not checked out RTI Threads, you can do that over on their website. It's rtithreads.com, and here is their NIL apparel line. And yes, a lot of football players, but also basketball, guys like Josh Dix. If you're a baseball fan, you can check out the Swarm baseball apparel, but also up-and-comers for the football team like Zach Lutmer and Carson Shire. You can check it all out by visiting rtithreads.com. Just click on the NIL Athletes tab, and this will take you to their NIL division. Again, RTI Threads. That's rtithreads.com. All right, let's go to our next caller. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
I ain't got much to add about the game. Kurt's stubborn. Cade's terrible. And Steve Gase fed. He lifts his middle finger, adjusts his glasses, and says, "You don't like it? too bad. Go suck on them apples. But the reason I called was I wanted to know if Don saw the podcast with Gallery and the other kicker with Matt Sherman.
No,
No, I haven't.
Don's shaking his head.
Well, it's pretty good. It's about 2 hours, and they talk about you and Bobby Elliott and Hayden a lot.
Okay. Who did I
It's
just...
pretty interesting. If you get a chance to watch it, it's pretty good.
We want to have... I was actually talking to a good friend of Matt Sherman's here the other day. We want to get Matt on this show at some point. So, good stuff. What podcast was that, sir? I wouldn't normally promote another podcast, but that kind of piques my interest.
You know, I don't know. I was just flipping. It was Nick Gallery and the place kicker at Iowa at the time. I can't remember his name now, but they were just talking about their careers in college football and talking about you and talking about how Don just got so mad at him one time because he wasn't doing his 4-step back progression to pass. He tried to sneak a couple more yards in there, and Don just got mad as hell at him.
You know, Don's got that temper. He's a loose cannon. You know, you watch this.
Yeah, but it was pretty good. No, they spoke well of you.
Well,
They said Hayden was the CEO, and you were like the first lieutenant.
there you go, Don. First lieutenant.
First lieutenant, okay. That's better than second lieutenant, I guess.
But yeah, he's a pretty interesting guy. He's up in Minneapolis right now.
Okay.
Got 2 sons that are quarterbacks. One's left-handed, one's right-handed.
And you're talking about Hurley. What was his name? Is it not Bobby Hurley? What was his
Brian?
name? Brian Hurley.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Brian's got doesn't he have a Hawkeye website that he runs?
It could be.
Okay. Yeah. No, good stuff. We'll have to check that out.
I was just flipping channels and run across it, and yeah, it's real good. But I won't keep you. Just as far as tonight, it happens sometimes.
It does. We appreciate you calling in, sir, and appreciate the suggestion on the show with Matt and the guys with Hurley's podcast. We'll check that out.
All right. Good night.
Thank you, sir. All right. Lemansky, appreciate the super chat. Lemansky says the fan base is in pain, but none more than my third stooge, Corey. Well, here's what I'll say. I am not in pain. All right. I'm past pain. I'm numb. But he says adversity demands internal fortitude. And yes, Don talks me off the ledge. I promise you I'm not on a ledge. Man, Kyle, can I just say something real quick? We're 2 hours into the show. This show has taught me a level of self-control. Because I get on here and the people just come after me like they just...
They do.
Wow.
Yeah, the comments have been tough tonight. I'm not going to lie.
So angry. I mean, that level of anger in this fan base, Don, like, Corey, I hate you because you said Michigan State was crap and now we're crap and I'm just angry.
It's like they took the bottled up feelings of watching Deacon Hill and turned it towards you.
Hey, let me just say, Michigan State's still crap. Can I still say that and get away with it? That'll make sense.
Michigan State's still crap.
Michigan State's still crap. One good performance doesn't change my opinion. Now, if they go out and who do they play next week, Kyle? Let's pull up their schedule while we're getting your next caller on the line. Thank you for calling our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line with Coach Patterson. Who's on the line?
Circle Herc.
Hey, Circle Herc, how are you?
I'm doing lovely. I live in Ames, and so I can hear the sirens going off down the street as Iowa State won, unfortunately, again tonight.
They came back.
Did you see what happened in that game, Corey?
No, I don't. I know what happened in part of the game. I know UCF was up 2 scores, and I know there was a pit. what, 2 pick sixes or something to that.
There was
effect.
an interception that they ran all the way down to the 1 yard line, and the guy did the stupid thing of dropping the ball on the 1 yard line, and Iowa State got the ball back.
Oh, he did.
That's the reason they won. They won because the second pick six was dropped on the 1 yard line.
You know what's funny about that? Can I just say something? Nobody's going to believe me, but I have a buddy who I was watching the game with tonight that's he can come onto the show and testify to this fact. During the Iowa game, it was halftime of the Iowa game, I flipped over. This is crazy. I flipped over to Iowa State UCF and saw Rocco Beck's first pick six, which was a horrible throw. It was actually after a big hit on Rocco Beck. Looked like he got concussed on the play. Mm-hmm. And what's crazy about what you just described to me, Colin, I promise I didn't watch it when what you're talking about, but on that first pick six, the guy goes into the end zone. He drops the ball rather quickly. And I turned to my buddy and I'm like, man, he dropped that ball quick. And my buddy's like, nah, he was 5 yards into the end zone. I'm like, man, just hold the ball. Why do these guys feel the need to drop it? Caleb Johnson did that against, was it Troy earlier this year? Nobody noticed it. They call a touchdown. Nobody blinked. But you go back and look at it. You're like, he dropped it right at the line. Why on earth are guys doing that? The irony of that is it sounds like the second pick six, the guy did that.
He did. It cost him the game.
Incredible. Don, why do guys do that? Why do guys drop the ball as soon as they pass the goal line?
Here's the way I always present it to my players. Why in God's name can't you act like you've been there 100 times before? Return the ball to the official. Look up your teammates.
I guess UCF hasn't.
Don't act like a fool.
Corey, in case you're wondering about Michigan State, you'll learn all you need to know about them the next 3 weeks, because they go to Michigan next week, and then they host Indiana the following week, and then they go to Illinois after that. So they may rip off 3 straight losses.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something? I said they may not get to bowl eligibility.
Maybe 4-7 after this.
I could see them being 4-6. You mean?
4-6. Yeah, 4-6.
Them being 4-6. Yeah. And then they have to win 2 straight to make bowl eligibility. Sure. I absolutely can see that. And I just unbelievable that's what happens to Iowa State. Like I said, if you had somebody, you have all these staff members on the sideline for UCF, they could have seen what I saw on the first pick six and made a point of saying to all their DBs, hey, hold on to that ball next time. What do you know? Later in the same game, they do it, and it cost them the game. Anyway, Circle Herc, anything else? I appreciate you calling in, because I did not realize that Iowa State had lost, or that they had come back and won.
3 very quick things. Number one, thanks for coming on and, giving everybody a little bit of support after this loss. Like and subscribe to the channel. It's very cathartic. Number 2, you started this episode off by admitting you were wrong about this game. And I think the world needs a lot more of that today.
Well,
admitting you were wrong is a superpower that everybody has in their front pocket, and they never use it. And I think it's a big thing when somebody actually goes, you know what, I was wrong about this game, or whatever it is.
Well,
and
you don't have much. I appreciate that, but you don't have much choice when you predicted a 28-10 win,
right,
and your team loses by 2 scores. I predicted a 3-score win. They lost by 2 scores.
And the third thing is, maybe you guys mentioned. Sorry, I apologize if this has already been mentioned, but Iowa did not force 1 punt today.
Yeah.
And the last 3 games, Iowa has forced 3 punts. That is crazy.
Yeah.
That's an insane stat. And there is plenty to criticize Kirk Ferentz, Cade, McNamara, the offense. There's plenty to criticize, of course, 100%. But what has happened to Phil Parker's defense?
Well, it's a great question. I don't have an answer for you. The Washington game, you can at least explain and say, hey, they bent, but then they made a couple of vaunted plays, trademarked Iowa defensive plays. and they blew them out, so nobody cares. But that was against a really good statistically a really good Washington offense. This was statistically up against a very bad Michigan State offense. This is what's I keep saying this, but I can't believe it. This is an offense that ranked outside the top 100 in total offense heading into this game. Do you realize that? Outside the top 100?
And what was the defense, like 58th in the country too?
Yeah, I mean, neither unit was very good, but the offense was especially bad. The offense was especially bad, and Iowa's defenders, specifically the DBs, looked like they were on skates all night.
Yeah, that to me is mind-boggling. It's hard enough being an Iowa fan for the last few years and being upset about the offense, and then you go online, you go on Twitter, and you see people saying, "Well, if we just had a little bit of better of an offense, everything would be great." And well, we do now, and for some reason, what happened to the defense? So it's okay. It is what it is. Thanks for taking my call. And I just wish a lot more fans would put things into perspective. Like, if you're upset, you can be upset. Why are you upset?
Yeah.
We should have won this game. We can't we're not forcing turnovers. We're not forcing punts. We need the ball. We're scoring. We need that ball. But anyway, thanks, Coach. Thanks, Corey. And thanks, guys, for taking my call.
Appreciate it, sir. Yeah, good stuff, because I do. I mean, the offense was not good in the first half, but Don, the defense was bad basically the whole game, with the exception being getting a little stingy down. In that first half, they kept their heads above water, right? They kept forcing field goal after field goal after field goal, but it's like at some point you got to force something. They couldn't get off the field. This is a defense that could not get off the field. How strange is that?
I wrote this down early in the game. We are catching blocks on defense, not attacking. They were the attacker. We were the attackee. That's how I saw it. They were showing more aggression toward us. They had any number of times where they put a crease into our defense and made a really productive play out of it. And we just didn't do a good job. We didn't look like we showed up with our usual attitude that we're gonna out-tough you. I didn't see that today.
Isn't that particularly strange on the heels of what they did last week? And you said it yourself, Don. You thought this team looked like a playoff team last week against Washington.
Yeah. One of the most complete games we played in a long time.
And that was against probably a better team as well.
How do you explain this? Because there's no way this is unless I'm trying to think of an explanation. They weren't coming off a bye. Michigan State was coming off a bye, so they had an extra couple of days to prepare. Hey, maybe all the team was watching my comments on Michigan. Maybe I'm to blame because I said Michigan State was garbage. They got real problems with my show during the week. What?
Well, speaking of your comments, I just want you to know, John says no more predictions, Corey.
Oh, all right.
John says you're not allowed to make predictions.
Man, I guess I'll have to find a new hobby.
I know you were going to make another one until John said that.
Yeah, it's amazing. The people that, not John specifically, it's the people that like to criticize. Hindsight's 20/20, right? The people who criticize the predictions that are wrong are the same people who are too cowardly to ever have a platform to make predictions. Don, how surprising was this performance today on the heels of what we saw last week? And do you have an explanation for the defense?
No. Hard to explain. I would say this. I do think that Michigan State fans would tell you this is the best game they played all year.
Yeah, I believe that. Of course. Okay. Yeah, there's not really any compare. I mean, what do you compare it to? They haven't looked good against anybody, with the exception.
Yeah, they've done a good job of shooting themselves in the foot, but not so much today. They played all day and only turned it over one time, right?
Yeah, their best game prior to this week was a 40-0 win over Prairie View. That was their only other game they played well in.
Yeah. So, all right, let's real quickly before we get to our next caller. Our RTI Threads player of the game is Reese Vanderzee, 3 receptions, 47 yards, and a touchdown. I guess if there's a silver lining, Don, he continues to demonstrate that as a true freshman, assuming he sticks around and he's an Iowa kid, small town Iowa kid, I'd expect him to. They should have a good wide receiver core to build around. They have 2 years with 1 extra year of Jacob Gill. The receiver core is one position group where they're not losing much of anything next season. Now, their transfer portal is always going to happen, and that position's been struck by the portal a lot in recent time. But maybe add a couple of good words about Reese's performance for maybe some family watching up in Rock Rapids.
Well, I do think there was, I believe, the Iowa State game where I thought he got manhandled a little bit. I believe that's the right game. But I think he learned from it. You know, he's showing a little more physicality now. I guess those press looks, and of course he beat the corner tonight down in the red zone. That was a nice touchdown. So he does a good job of high pointing the ball. He's got good hands. He's proven that already. And he's become a more competitive person, I believe, from game 1, game 2. Game 1 was no issue, of course, but game 2 was. So I think he's learned from it. He's older and he's wiser and he's more competitive now than he was a month ago. That's all a good thing. Got a bright future.
Kyle, how special is it that we get the return of Iowa basketball this coming week with the first exhibition of the season?
I think it couldn't come at a better time, to tell you the truth. I think it's coming right on schedule.
Folks, visit rtithreads.com for apparel of Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer, Peyton Sandfort, Josh Dix, Owen Freeman. Go down the list. Iowa baseball, the Swarm has partnered with RTI Threads and the Hawkeyes to give you great apparel and merchandise for the baseball team. So check it all out at rtithreads.com and support Hawkeye Athletics. Let's go to Tala Tony. I never pronounced that right. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey.
Hey.
That was one of the worst losses I have ever seen from this team. Just everything went wrong.
Well,
I've noticed a trend. A lot of times we're getting momentum, we're gaining national hype, and we get one stupid loss, and all the hype dies. I've seen this happen so many times.
Yeah. With the exception being 2009, 2015.
Yeah.
I mean, they
there are a few exceptions, but
there are exceptions to the rule. But I get what you're saying. 2016 was a disappointment. 2010 was a disappointment. This year has been a big fail. Even if they win out, I think it's a fail. People may disagree with that. But
I was originally going to come on here and say, "Oh,
were you going to come on here with me?"
Kirk's got to go, but I thought about it more. I don't think we need a whole system overhaul to get back to doing well. It's just that one problem. Okay, maybe not that one problem. But that QB has been killing us. It's been a thorn. That position has been a thorn in our side for so many years.
No argument here.
I don't know. I don't know if Sullivan, if he started the whole year, if we would have been having a different conversation. I say it would have been lost, but we may have. But you can't go back. Next year is going to be brutal. I don't think we make a bowl game.
Well, the schedule is a bear, and like I said earlier, they've got 3 games that if they were played right now, a lot of people would look at them as guaranteed losses. Now, there are no guaranteed wins or guaranteed losses, but then there's probably at least 3 to 4 other games where you could say they're 50-50 toss-ups. So, yeah, I could squint and easily see 6-6. How about this quote? Kyle threw this up. Apparently, the Gazette has posted this as a quote. Kirk Ferentz on the quarterback situation, quote, "No real discussion on making a switch."
Jesus Christ.
I have heard that out of the horse's mouth, but that's reportedly
It's in their article for the night.
It sucks, but it's what Kirk does. You'd be stupid to expect anything else.
Yep. Well, Todd, Tony, appreciate you. Am I pronouncing your name right? I always ask you this.
You're doing it close enough.
All right. Well, thank you for sticking around so long on hold. Do you have anything else for Coach?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you being here late on a Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Appreciate him being here. Yeah, that is an unbelievable quote. If not taken out of context, I don't know how you could take that out of context as long as it's true to the context it's there, that Kirk was commenting on the quarterback situation. Again, Michigan State defeating Iowa 32-20. Give everybody a quick scoreboard update because we're going to try to wrap this thing up here pretty soon because it's late for Coach. It's late for all of us. How about this game going out of the wire? UNLV and Oregon State over on the CW. Don, you're missing that game right now on the CW. 33-23, Rebels up on the Beavs. TCU and Utah 13-7, end of the third. The Horned Frogs on top there. A lot of high-scoring games today. Clemson over Virginia, 48-31. Miami over Louisville, 52-45. How about Indiana's rout on Nebraska, Don? How do you explain that one? 56-7.
That's another head scratcher.
Husker land. Missouri over Auburn, 21-17. Your Army Knights are still unbeaten, 45-28 over East Carolina. Wisconsin blowing out Northwestern, their third straight blowout victory. That's going to be a difficult game in Kinnick. UCLA taking down Rutgers, 35-32. It's a weird one because UCLA struggled offensively, but that Rutgers defense has struggled here.
That was on the East Coast, I believe, wasn't it?
It was. What a that's called traveling, right? That's called traveling. South Carolina destroying Oklahoma. The Sooners have some problems. 35-9. Cincinnati over Arizona State, 24-14. Wake Forest over UConn, 23-20. Alabama falling to Tennessee, 24-17. Notre Dame over Georgia Tech, 31-13. Brett Bielema and the Illini over Michigan, 21-7. The 21st ranked Navy midshipmen, right? They're the midshipmen, Don. I'm going to say that right. 51-17. NC State, the Wolfpack over the Bears of Cal, 24-23. Kansas over Houston, 42-14. And let's see, Maryland over USC in a comeback game. What a win for the Terps. They were down 2 scores, 29-28. Deion Sanders and his Buffs defeating Arizona 34-7. Baylor over Texas Tech 59-35. Spencer Petras and Utah State, they fall to 1-6, getting beat by they are, man, it's getting late. They are 3-4. New Mexico. How about Spencer Petras' stats? 32 of 47 for 360 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He is their offense, Don. I'm sorry.
You're not going to mention his rushing stats, are you?
No, I'm not. No.
Can I jet in, Corey? I've got some more post-game quotes I think you'd find interesting.
Sure. Go ahead.
So this is an excerpt from the Gazette. I'm just gonna read it because it's just funny. So it says McNamara's 1 interception against Michigan State came at a critical time. He said it was a quote miscommunication with his intended receiver, tight end Luke Lachey. This is the quote from Cade. He said, quote, "He did the right thing. That was 100% on me. We were both reading the linebacker, and then from my perspective, I made the decision where to put the ball. He made the decision how to run the route, and he was right at the end of the day." Farron said, however, there was, quote, no real discussion on making a switch to Sullivan. Quote, basically, we didn't do anything well enough to win tonight, and that would be included. Farron said, when asked by the Gazette about McNamara's performance, quote, Cade missed some throws, so we're going to have to do better in a lot of areas.
Gag. Whatever.
I mean, the only positive thing I took from that was at least Cade owned up to the, he didn't put it on Luke. He didn't say, oh, it was miscommunication and leave it at that. At least he took.
No, that's good. That's great. Chase, thank you for the donation via Venmo. He says the O-line and the D-line just didn't play well. Castro really helps. Let's see. I think this is a misquote here. Castro really helps TJ Hall. Okay, helps TJ Hall. Too bad to see them lose this way. So appreciate the donation there from Chase. And a couple quick things. Iowa State over UCF. That was mentioned by Kyle here a little bit ago. Come back fast from there.
I do want to correct the record, by the way, Corey, just because I looked into the game more. So he dropped the ball on the 1 yard line. The ruling was there was no clear recovery. So UCF did still get the ball back and scored. I just saw the clip of the dropped interception. That was not the reason they lost the game. They did still happen, but nobody touched the ball after it sat there on the one. The rest blew the play dead, and they just gave UCF the ball back.
Okay. All right. And good clarification. I'll probably get destroyed in the comment section because what people will do is they'll hear that at one point in the show tomorrow, then they'll comment.
Oh my gosh, you just look at Twitter.
Yeah. Kansas State over West Virginia, 45-18. Memphis wins big over North Texas. Florida over Kentucky, and Georgia taking down the top-ranked Longhorns 30-15. And I believe Quinn Ewers got pulled in that game. Or did Arch Manning get pulled? I don't even know who's starting for the number one team in the country.
Ewers got pulled.
Ewers got pulled, and then they put him back in the game. Yeah.
All right. Let's go to our caller. Thank you for calling Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey, am I on?
You're on the air, Lomansky. Welcome.
I've been listening to you for 31 minutes. I've been on the horn for 31 minutes. I just was quiet to help you out.
Well, we appreciate you holding tight, and I know it's late, but thank you for being here.
How many people have taken shots? Are you wounded a little bit?
I stopped reading the comment. On a night like tonight, I see like there were at one point there were 1,000 unread comments in the chat, and a lot of them were not all of them, but some of them were directed at me. I just stopped reading them. If people want a comment that should be up on the screen, it'll have to be a super chat because I'm not looking at the rest of them tonight. Kyle is moderating for us, but that's about all we have tonight.
Well, I call you a stooge as a compliment. There's three of us, and if Kyle wants to be the fourth stooge, we can include him in our brotherhood.
Okay. He fits the bill on that, Lomansky.
Well, Coach Don would tell you that you're in the arena, and Coach Don has been in the arena, and he's seen a few things, so he's pretty controlled most games, unless somebody tells some stupid football thing that's totally ridiculous. But you're in the arena, so do you know what they call that when you're in the arena and you take more arrows than you think you should? You know what they call that?
What do they call that?
The George Armstrong Custer syndrome. I went there on vacation, saw where he was buried. It could be worse, Corey.
I appreciate that, Lomansky.
No, you do a good job. I think the fan base is a victim of expectations, a little out of control. You might remember that I was scared of Iowa State before they played game one. And I kind of said that on your program that I feared them. And, of course, I got my cycling friend that keeps me informed on them. But I think our expectations hurt us a little bit. I think the number of teams in the middle of the pack is numerous. And I tell you what, I still like to see the black and gold. And Don's going to say we'll live to fight another day. And he's used to the up and downs, and his emotion is better than most average Hawkeye fans. And I still think there's a lot to play for. And there's always hope. And I want to make an announcement. I'm not on the verge of changing podcasts away from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Just like Kirk Ferentz, I have an announcement to make tonight. There's no danger of me changing from my number one podcast, Corey.
Lomansky, I'm on the verge of changing what Iowa sports I follow, but I'm not on the verge of changing podcasts.
Hey, Mr. Appin92 in the chat says, Corey, I love you, but you may have to find another hobby because Iowa football will not be relevant again for a very, all caps, long time.
Very long time.
So at least
I hope our coach.
Real quick, at least he loves me.
There's that.
Well, hang in there, Corey, and I think there's always hope. Now everybody's leaped ahead 1 year to next year, which probably will keep Don Patterson up at night, that we're all jumping into the next season, not even finishing the schedule.
Don's
being
not
a coach.
I know Don is internally pulling his hair out when I ask things like the season. When I say things like the season's over, the goals are shot. I know you hate that, Don, and you feel free to rip me, but I'm just telling you the reality of how a lot of people feel right now. You know, that's 9-3 is not good enough. Not with that schedule and not with the new 12-team playoff format. So, anyways, Lemansky, appreciate
you. You could be rooting for the USC Trojans. It could be one hell of a lot worse, Kyle and Corey. How's that for ripping you?
That's true. That is true.
Lemansky,
Good night. Have a great night.
Appreciate it, sir.
Could always be a Nebraska fan.
Yeah, or how about Nebraska? Man, what a weird situation they're in right now. All right, let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We have got James on hold. James, you've been here forever. Thank you for being.
All right. You ready for this? I'm going to start off with Classic Kirk. You ready?
Classic Kirk. All right, I'm ready.
We were 10-2 last year, just so you guys know.
All right. Did he say that tonight?
No, but he said it before, you know. So
Would you be shocked? Corey? He said we won 10
wanted to
games.
make sure, you know.
I
that
want him to say that because I wasn't aware that he was 10-2 last year. And they were 10-2 last year. That's what's crazy. He can actually say that because they were 10-2 last year.
No, I was just trying to crack a little bit of a joke, you know, because, you know, he has a tendency to say those kind of things sometimes.
Wait a minute, Corey. I think, didn't they play 14 games?
Yeah, but he was talking about regular season last year.
Yeah, we only care
the
about
other
the
ones
one.
don't count, huh?
We only
that's what he said, though. So I don't know. He said 10-2. Like, obviously, he was not 10-2, but that's what he said in his press, like last year or whatever, whenever he said it.
James, I think he'd count those postseason games if he won them, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I was gonna say we
Probably,
only count the ones we won.
Probably,
Don.
yeah.
So really, we won 10 games last year. He never said 10-2. He said we won 10
Yeah,
games.
we won 10 games last year. Yeah, everybody says 10-2, but he said, yeah, we won 10 games last year. Is what he said, but we all just say 10-2. But no, it was a struggle. One thing it kind of reminded me of, and I know it wasn't just the one guy that killed us, Nick Marsh, right? I know it wasn't just one guy that killed us, but it kind of reminded me of like that Purdue, the Purdue a couple times where it's like killing you to the passing game. It's like, what are you doing about it, right? Like, what is he doing about it, right? And I felt like maybe a chance to neutralize, and I've said this, and I know he doesn't do this, and I know I'm going to keep beating the drum on this, right? But I think a way to neutralize that guy early would have been to have Jamari just follow him. And obviously the other guys were killing us too, but to neutralize that, right, you just have Jamari follow him. I don't understand why we don't ever have Jamari follow the best receiver on the team ever.
Yeah, well, Don mentioned that earlier, and that's an interesting comparison I hadn't thought of. Like, I was thinking worse losses in recent time under Kirk. Boy, that 2021 loss to Purdue was horrible. Remember that? They had just beaten Penn State, and then they come
That's
home.
the Anthony Mahungu. That's the Anthony Mahungu game, right?
Ooh, they just no. It
was Mahungu before that. That was David Bell. That was David Bell. Yeah, Mahungu was before that. Yeah.
Goodness gracious, David Bell.
That one was bad too, though. The Mahungu one was bad too because Mahungu was even. I feel like Mahungu wasn't even as good. Like David Bell was at least a really good receiver. Mahungu was like, who knew who Mahungu even was before that point? But
if anything, after that Purdue loss in 21, they went to Wisconsin and were even worse in the first half.
But let me make something very clear. The reason I think this loss is worse, that is a Purdue team led by Jeff Brom that had a history of causing Kirk Ferentz problems with wideouts, with the passing game, with game planning. And maybe Jonathan Smith will prove to be the next Jeff Brom. Maybe that's what this is going to be, and he's just going to have Kirk's number. But we had not seen any reason to think that as of yet.
No, yeah, I wasn't saying it was like I was worse or what that I'm just saying it reminds me a lot of that kind of style of like the receivers are killing you. And obviously it wasn't one receiver like it was David Bell, right? Like it wasn't the same receiver the whole time, but like they still were just finding ways to kill you in the passing game. That's kind of what it reminded me of watching it comparing to those other games too as well when they were killing us in the passing game. But no, it's just frustrating because like I feel like ways to eliminate it, maybe we don't get Nick Marshall much receptions if we put Jamari in the side because they only threw Jamari's way like once or twice, right? Because they don't want to throw Jamari's way. So I think a way maybe to take those receivers out is have Jamari follow their best receiver. And I don't understand why we never did that. We didn't do that with Desmond King. Obviously, Josh Jackson got a lot of picks, right? But we didn't do that with Desmond King. We didn't do that with Cooper DeJean, right? We never do that with our best corners, but we follow their best receivers. And then it's like it happens what happened today where they take advantage of Nestor or TJ Hall or whoever else it is because they know we're not going to switch. So they put their best receiver on one side of the field because they're not going to do nothing about it.
And they attacked the safeties, and they attacked. I thought Jonathan Smith, or whoever's calling the plays, I don't know if he's a play caller, but they were very directed and very deliberate with what they did tonight. And it was a well coached, well called game. And it looks like those guys got to give that new coaching staff credit. It looks like they really coached hard during the bye week, right, Don? Is that a fair assessment based on what we saw today?
They had a good plan for us.
Give them some credit. James, anything else?
Yeah, one more thing. I was gonna say, oh yeah, like with the whole portal thing, I don't understand why we didn't go after a portal corner. Like, I feel like that's kind of a need, and maybe they trust their guys, but at some point, like, I think like you gotta, he has to go some direction sometimes, and I feel like Kirk's afraid to go in those directions, right? Like, we knew Cooper DeJean was going to be a big loss, right? And obviously, maybe if you have somebody that might lit a fire under those other guys, right? Like a TJ Hall. Like, and I'm not saying they don't have a fire lit under them, right? But if you go get somebody maybe to compete with them or who's taking the reps and they have to show more, it might light more of a fire under them. You know what I'm saying? Than what they have now.
They may do that here in the
I
offseason.
have to. Well, they didn't lose Jamari anyway, so they have to probably go that way anyways. But I'm saying, like, even with Jamari, if you added somebody on the other side, maybe you light a fire under those guys, and maybe you could have gotten more out of them if you try to add somebody. But I also don't know if you knew how bad they'd be. But people are talking about this defense. I feel like this is what Phil's always done. Yes, we give them more points, but they always play that blanket where it's like, bend but don't break. We play off of you. We try to bring everything in front of us. They missed a lot of tackles today, so it looked worse than what it usually is, if that makes sense. But the style was the same style where it's like, we play off, and then we're gonna try to come and make the tackle. They just didn't make the tackles. That's why it looked worse than what most of his defenses is, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah. Regardless of why it was bad.
Yeah, no,
Whether
definitely for sure. But no, it's kind of inexcusable, and I'm not gonna harp on the quarterback thing because I know there ain't gonna be no change. So I'm not gonna sit here and harp on something that I know is not gonna happen because we know how that is. But it's interesting to see, and it scares me because I feel like that's why a lot of players transfer from that position. And I know they're not great, right? I know they haven't been great where they have, right? Like Deuce, like Joey Labus, like Carson May, right? Like, I feel like those guys haven't been good at other places, right? But, like, I feel like that's why some of the people transfer that position is because they feel like they're not getting a fair shake sometimes, right? Like, and I don't know, maybe if that's what Brandon Sullivan does. And if he does that, I think we're even in a worse situation. If he transfers, I think we're going to be even in a worse situation than what we already have a potential to be next year.
I think Iowa's best move right now, I'm not saying it's Iowa's choice, but I think the best case scenario is Kirk gets to 9 wins and walks away at the end of the season. I think that's
definitely, because then you restart it at least
to succeed moving forward. Because I think there's potential of this really nosediving, and I don't want to see that happen to Kirk. And I do think there's a potential that happens, and we'll see if he does that. But yeah, today was rough.
For sure. That's a future thing, and obviously you have to get one in Northwestern. But I know it's gonna be a tough place to play because the atmosphere is just weird there, right?
Why do you have to get one against Northwestern? What does that do?
Because I feel like, obviously, I don't want to lose to Northwestern. Northwestern's probably one of the worst teams. I just don't want to lose to them, right? Like, you have to get one.
Like, what's accomplished?
They don't have to in the fact of that, but like as a fan, you think you want them to have to focus on getting that one, right? Like there's no like motivation.
They have no business losing to Northwestern, just like they have no business.
But I also know that's a really weird atmosphere with the whole stadium situation. So who knows how that's gonna be too? With there being like nothing and you're in the middle of pretty much water right around you. Like, it's a weird situation, so who knows how that's going to play out. But
Well, James, appreciate you calling in, sir, and hopefully we'll talk to you after a win next week.
yeah, for sure. Talk to you later.
Thank you, sir. All right. It is, well, it's late. It's 12:34 Central Time. Got a couple of callers left, but Don, I'm going to let you go to bed because it's late where you are, and you've been out with us for well over 2 hours. I did not expect to be under these circumstances tonight. When we talked about doing the show last week after the Washington game, I thought for sure we'd be talking about an Iowa team that had moved to 5-2 and, was still very much alive in the Big Ten title race. So thank you for taking the extra time, but I want to let you get some shut-eye. And any final words, Don, before I let you go on anything?
Well, the sun will come up tomorrow, and our guys will pick themselves up, and they'll represent well next weekend. That may not be what you want to hear, but that's what people with character do. So we'll bounce back. Today's the lost opportunity. Tomorrow's a preparation for another opportunity next Saturday. And our guys will represent well. They'll represent with a lot of pride.
Well, Don, thank you for sacrificing for Iowa and for the show and for the fans. And get some shut-eye. Be safe. And we'll talk to you next week.
Thank
That
you,
sounds
Coach.
good, Corey.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate it. All right. Appreciate Coach Patterson being here. Kyle, you want to finish this thing off with me, or what you got going on here?
Yeah, as long as we're not going too far past one, I'll stick it up.
Too far past one. I was planning on going till 2. What are you talking about?
No, you want to talk about this crap for another hour 40?
Yeah, I really do.
Oh dear.
All right, let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We have got Doug here. Doug.
Yeah, I'm optimistic.
You got a big smile on your face. You look a little.
They had a 24-point win today, and that was with only playing Owen and Payton for about 20 minutes. And the defense looked much improved today. So, we're not talking about the secret skirmish against Southern Illinois.
What are you talking about?
Hawkeye says skirmish against Southern
Illinois. You're way beyond. I don't have any idea what you're talking about. You're not even speaking my language, buddy boy.
Iowa had a secret skirmish against Southern Illinois today in basketball.
Southern Illinois?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just having with you.
I have to admit, I didn't know that. I haven't been into. So they had a secret scrimmage on a Sunday right now. It's Saturday.
Well, you could have asked Tom Caker about it. Yeah, they had a secret scrimmage against Southern Illinois today. It's basketball season starts on Friday.
What happened?
They won by about 24 with only playing Payton and Owen about 20 minutes. Lodgy and Brock started. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Is Southern Illinois supposed to be any good?
No, they're horrible. They replaced their whole team.
So why? So
why learned nothing about Iowa basketball today? But they had a scrimmage and they won.
All right.
Just talk about something more positive.
Great. I'm glad they beat up on the Salukis. That's phenomenal.
I was just trying to mess around with you, but
phenomenal.
No, the quarterback thing has been going on forever. One of the games I went to in high school, Kyle McCann was starting quarterback, and it was a game against Michigan. It was last week of October because I remember it was during the state cross country meet, and I didn't go to that, and my coach was mad. But anyway, they played against Michigan, number 8th ranked team in the country. Kyle McCann was struggling. They put in Brad Banks. Only time I've ever booed with the crowd. He pulled Brad Banks. Next year, Brad Banks wins the Heisman Trophy. He has not put – that's a big reason why I think he does what he does now. This was in 2001. Like I said, Michigan was ranked number 8 in the country. And Brad Banks was a lot better quarterback than Kyle McCann. And this is just what Kirk's always done. I mean, he doesn't – I mean, yeah, he had to – even with – you can name Stanzi, and that took a lot for him to pull Jake. But the quarterback thing is just nothing new. A lot of this isn't new. And I don't know how a game we only lost by 12 points, only gave up 32, felt like it was a 55-7 game. I don't know. It just like they just scored on every possession. They were more than happy to kick the field goals. People were going, oh, they didn't mind.
That was the one thing I got right about this game. I told everybody heading into the game their best player is a kicker.
Yeah.
He was impressive. You could just tell watching him kick the ball. He's one of those guys that's different, like Torrey when he punted.
Well, I don't know, again, why on 4th and 2, he took Cade out and didn't go for it and made Stevens hit a 58-yard field goal. I'm going back to that one. I still don't understand what he was talking about. I don't know what that proves about Cade or Stevens, but okay.
I felt bad for Drew because he makes those all the time. He does not give him the opportunity to kick those very often. If he got them in games, he'd be making them more often than not. I mean, he's really comfortable from 50 to 55.
Yeah, and the caller acted like he left it 10 yards short too. He missed it by a yard. It wasn't short. It went 65 yards in the air, 62 yards in the air.
Yeah. That was not the play I would be questioning it, but that caller was very adamant about that. I'm very adamant about a lot of things. But the one question I would have is if he does go 7-5 and next year's team seems really bad, and let's say they go 5-7, Beth does have to at least he has to at least be on the hot seat. He can't have that much power after
he will never be on the hot seat. He will never be. I know what you're saying, Doug, and I agree with it, but he will never. He could go 6-6 for 6 years and not be on the hot seat.
Well, I don't agree.
No, he's on the hot seat.
I don't think he can go 6-6 for 6 straight years. I think what'll happen if he goes. Here's what I'll say, Doug. If they tank this year, and I don't expect them to, if they go 7-5, then next year 6-6. If he doesn't retire after this season, 7-5, then 6-6. I think he steps down at that point. I think he would do the Hayden Fry thing and step because I think Kirk cares too much about the program. And I know people would say, "Well, he held the program hostage because of nepotism." That may be, but he still loves the program. And maybe there was a massive blind spot. I agree with that, but I think he would step down if that happened. He's not going to step down at 7-5 this year, but if they go 5-7, 6-6 next year, I could see them doing that. But he may step down after this year, and I think that'd be the best interest for everybody. That's my opinion.
And before I leave, not to get back on basketball, I had a question for both of you. You guys got your Big Ten Plus memberships back because their first 3 games are on Big Ten Plus, or you don't watch those games?
I haven't done that yet.
I'll get it right. I'll get it right the day before.
Okay. And Coach Close will be back, or you have someone else lined up, or
no? I think Coach Close is going to be with us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I know Coach Close is going to be recording a preview here. We got a preview with Kashin coming out. We got a preview with Gary coming out. So, yeah, there'll be a lot of basketball here coming up soon.
I just, again, I think I agree with so many people in the chat, and I'm sorry for taking any of your guys' time. If you're still listening, then you're a trooper.
We still got 300 people watching.
300 people are still.
You're a trooper. You deserve a round of applause, even if you disagree with me or think Corey's predictions. But I'm not going to ask you any predictions.
We're still on this.
No,
this is what's amazing. We're still on this.
3 hours after the start of the show, and we can't let that go.
I mean, incredible.
No, my thing was just I guess that was my question. So you don't have the basketball show, and
I think Iowa basketball is going to win the whole darn thing, Doug.
Okay, there we go.
Top of the world. It's going to be.
Corey, that's a prediction. You're not allowed to make those.
Just
again,
yeah, my predictions don't mean anything.
Well, I didn't want you to make a prediction after you said what you said. I was like, I'm not trying to, but that was kind of what I was getting at. You guys, are you optimistic about Iowa Hawkeye basketball at all?
Yeah, I'm optimistic.
I'm excited to watch that one again. And Josh Dix as well.
You know what I'm intrigued by, Doug? I'm intrigued that people really aren't talking about the men's team, and they're flying under the radar. That's what I'm intrigued by. Like they can kind of just be. Everything is going to be free flowing, I think, and hopefully the transfers gel and yeah, I just think it's going to be fun to not really have them on the radar. People are going to be, even though the women are projected to be quote unquote worse than the men, people are more interested in the women, even though Caitlin's gone. They've already sold out the season. So, yeah, I think the men have a chance to be.
No, dude,
fun.
I was really scared to ask you your prediction for Hawkeye basketball. That's just why I was like tiptoeing around that. So, but
No, I haven't done it for you yet, but I think they'll be good. Yeah.
Okay. Again, I think they'll beat Northwestern. Again, I don't know anything about football, but I think they'll beat Northwestern. And it's a home game, isn't it? Because James is making it sound like it was a
Yeah, it's a home game.
Yeah,
I don't know why James said that. It's a home game. Three home games are Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Nebraska.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be in attendance next week, by the way, Corey.
Okay. Again, thank you. And again, I'm not sure if Rofield Feathers. Hey, I believe I was going to win every game until they lose. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you to everyone in the chat.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Doug, for being here. And as we take our last couple callers, a real quick shout out to our friends over at Iowa Smokehouse. Plugged them earlier, but certainly get your orders in because we got a long basketball season ahead. And plenty of opportunity to watch great Hawkeye sports, even if you feel kind of apathetic right now with the football team at 4-3. I'm sure you're still going to watch. We're all still going to watch. The show's not going to just shut down. Prediction Corey's not going away. So get your Iowa Smokehouse ready. Visit iowasmokehouse.com for their bacon meat sticks, their steak bites, their jerky. Everything is tasty and fresh. It's great quality. And it's an Iowa company and a supporter of Hawkeye Athletics and of this show. So even better reason to buy from Iowa Smokehouse. Pair it with your favorite bourbon or beer. Visit iowasmokehouse.com and use that code on the screen, Hawkeyes, for 15% off your total order. That's iowasmokehouse.com. See how tasting is believing. You'll never need to go anywhere else for anything snacking related when you have Iowa Smokehouse at your doorstep. iowasmokehouse.com. And of course, if people have not done it, certainly check out our partnership with none other than Lance Shuttler and Ascent Nutrition. We were thinking of Lance as his current residence down in Florida was hit hard by Hurricane Milton, right?
Yeah.
Right, Milton? Man,
it gets late, man. You get that way, Kyle, where you just can't even think? You ever get that way, or am I the only one that
Sometimes I would say I stopped thinking about halfway through the second quarter, though.
Anyways, folks, check it out. You can visit the link in our description. You can also type in the link. It's goascentnutrition.com/Hawkeyes. And Ascent Nutrition is owned by Lance. He graduated from the University of Iowa. He's passionate about helping people in the health industry. And specifically, these two products that are featured here on the landing page, their pine needle extract, their humic and fulvic acid, help your brain health, your gut health, your energy level. And the pine needle extract actually tastes great. It's wild harvested and pure. It's clean. It's all organic. Trust what you're buying. They've got a rigorous third-party testing program in place, and you have a 90-day money-back guarantee. With any purchase, you'll get a special discount courtesy of this show and our friends over at Ascent Nutrition. This is an American company, an Iowa company. So again, give them a chance. Go ascentnutrition.com/Hawkeyes. You can click the link in our description. Use the code Hawkeyes15. Again, that's the code Hawkeyes15 for 15% off your total order. Again, one more time, that's Hawkeyes15 at goascentnutrition.com. Let's go to our final Iowa Smokehouse caller of the night. We got Corey with us. Corey's made the trip all the way back from East Lansing. He's not inebriated, although you're good, right? Even though you endured that game, you made it home safely. You're not tired. You're just ready to chat about Hawkeye sports, right?
Yes, sir. And about my predictions that I may have been accurate with. Sorry, I lost my voice. Us Hawkeye fans. I don't know if you guys heard Let's Go Hawks, during the telecast, but we let it rip out there. We had.
Well, you didn't let it rip loud enough because it didn't work, Corey.
Well,
it didn't work, Corey.
So I have a different take on this whole thing, and I will say that, in my opinion, I would put that Michigan State team and their performance tonight, I would put them up against anybody in the Big Ten, and they're going to play within 7 points of anybody tonight. And I mean, Oregon, you name it. I have not seen team speed and elusiveness like that since I sat in the Rose Bowl and watched Christian McCaffrey just hand us our shorts and our ankles at the end of the game. I mean,
but Corey, tell me how. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying that you can't make progress during a bye week, but this is a team that got blown out by combined 52 points to those two teams at the top of the Big Ten you're talking about in Ohio State and Oregon. Literally 4 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, respectively.
But they were able to move the ball on those guys. They just threw picks and turned it over.
Real quick, though, they didn't eclipse 250 total yards in either game.
Well, okay.
I'm just saying, the numbers are the numbers. They had 468 total yards tonight.
And I think Kirk mentions this, that sometimes things, at some point, it just snowballs on you.
That's true. I agree with that.
You start getting the yips. It's like putting. You miss a couple 3-4 footers, and all of a sudden you're done. You can't make anything. And I watched these guys, and my son, I had both my sons with me, and they're like, why is Iowa waiting for the runner to come to them? They never do this. I watched Schulte. We were in the end zone corner, but looking up the field of play, and you can see all the gaps. You can see everything aligned, and Schulte's fitting the gap perfectly. It's coming to him, and here's the back running, and he just sits there and waits. That never happens. I almost think that maybe Phil said to the guys, listen, don't try to run and blow these guys up. Just try to get in front of them until you get other guys that can help swarm to the ball, and we can kind of gang tackle these guys down. Because everybody was waiting. They were standing. I've never seen Iowa football stand there and wait for the runner to come to them.
It's funny you say that, because last week against Washington, there was at least one or two plays where Quinn Schulte did exactly what you're saying right now, and they gave up he gave up probably 10 extra yards on one play where a Washington ball carrier broke loose on the right side, and Schulte's, instead of cutting him off, he's just waiting for him to come to him, and he's giving up all this extra yardage. It's funny you say that, because I remember thinking that a week ago, but that seems odd for an Iowa DB, especially an experienced sixth-year guy like Schulte.
Yeah. And
good observation.
I'm sorry?
A good observation on your part.
Well, it was just slapping us in the face. We were like in shock. We're like, what are we doing? We're just standing here every time and letting them run at us. And we were falling on our backs. I've never seen that. But anyway, that was my first take. For Erica, I did need to address the elephant in the room, which was the fact that Brian Ferentz leading Maryland to the victory tonight. I think that we all need to acknowledge the excellence that took place out east. So
what a great job by Brian getting them winning that game against the Trojans. Wasn't that something?
And I don't want to necessarily make a a bombastic statement that if Brian were still here, maybe we would have had a better offensive performance.
We can only assume.
But we can only speculate here at this
Well, we know
point.
we can only assume that this team would be better if Brian were here. Right?
Now,
they'd certainly be more humble. They'd certainly be more prepared, more dynamic offensively, more explosive.
I don't know about
Corey. If Brian was here, I could tell you one thing for certain. They would have some great practices if he was here.
Oh yeah. I think they have great practices now. I'm sure they have.
I guarantee you, Cade McNamara will have a great practice this week. He'll have his best practice as a Hawkeye this week.
But what I think also is that we would be reminded that what's the upside to going with Sullivan?
Yeah, Sullivan has no upside. He's only 7 for 7 in the red zone, guys. He's only had 6 touchdowns and a field goal when he's gotten in the game.
So
he almost put it over last week, though, Kyle. He almost
they got a field goal out of it.
There's so many thoughts and so much electricity arcing inside my head as far as what I want to say, but I'll say this. Walking back on our half-hour walk to our parking spot, I was watching Iowa State come back and win it against UCF. And it's just blatant. I mean, when you have a great quarterback, your capabilities are so much greater. Well, Cade was supposed to be this great quarterback. Well, then he got injured. So, I think that the whole process and the logical thinking pattern as to what Kirk Ferentz's approach is something that makes sense. But there are wrenches that were thrown in the gears. And we all want to hate Ferentz for Cade sucks, blah, blah, blah. Well, Cade got injured and he's just not as effective as he was at Michigan. And do we truly believe, okay, first off, what percentage of performance exposure do us as fans have when it comes to Sullivan? I mean, how much do we really see of all the practices and of all the game film and comparative capabilities that are out there? What's available to us? Well, basically none of practice, which is
real quick. Let me answer your question. We know that in 2 years at Northwestern of playing a lot of football, he threw for about 68% through the year and threw for 10 touchdowns to 5 interceptions.
So statistically, I mean, you don't know.
Statistically, he was just as good as Cade was, if not better, with less talent around him at Northwestern. And it has
by the way,
go ahead, sir.
Well, I was just gonna say, if the exposure is an issue too, like let's go back and tally up the games that they've been up multiple scores with 5 minutes to go and haven't put anybody else in the game.
Yeah, that's a good argument right there. Is that we should have seen more of him in those games. Now, how many of those games at Northwestern were wins?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Well, it
doesn't matter.
If
Okay.
it's against second team or third team, because we're
talking about Big Ten conference play, though, Corey. We're not talking about
he was playing against good defense after good defense with inferior skill position players and an inferior offense.
I'm more impressed with those numbers at Northwestern than anything Cade does at Michigan.
Yeah.
Cade's playing with 4- and 5-star defensive players, receivers, offensive linemen, whereas, I mean,
Cade was the quarterback that beat Ohio State, and the part that everybody doesn't bring up when they talk about that game was he had a running back run for 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Donovan.
There's no way
Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards made J.J. McCarthy look great too. I mean,
but
really,
I'm just making this very clear. you can't possibly think that Cade's a better candidate because you're going to default to Cade because he won more games at Michigan than Brendan did at Northwestern. You can't possibly think that's the
No, so here's where I was going with this is we don't know how much of the full offense that Sullivan knows, and we don't know what, if he's had enough reps in practice to where they have confidence with him playing with the ones, and that can be Kirk Ferentz's fault that he hasn't had. But my point is that I've got enough trust in Kirk Ferentz. He doesn't want to lose. And if he thinks he's going to lose and he thinks if he switched quarterbacks, he'd win, he'd have done it. I mean, he did it with Jake Christensen. He's done it before. He did it when he put, CJ Beathard in. But it's a situation where I think we're passing judgment when we may not have enough information to really pass judgment. I'm not saying that Ferentz is innocent. We should have more exposure, more film on Sullivan, so that we could make a judgment. I am with that. You should be getting your backups prepared in case your starter gets injured. You should have some film on Sullivan by now, and we
So
don't.
let me ask you this, Corey. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that Kirk genuinely believed that having his son as the offensive coordinator through 2023 was the best thing for the program? Was that the best thing for the program? Do you think that he honestly felt that?
No, here's what I believe in Kirk. I believe that he believes in people's abilities to improve. He does not judge.
Hold on. Can we just address the question? Do you believe, you just got done saying that he would not play a guy that he doesn't believe gives him the best chance. So would he have a coordinator in Brian Ferentz in charge of the offense and not believe he's the best option?
I think that Kirk is not delusional. I think that he could interpret the situation as, listen, our offense and our offensive coordinator aren't getting it done right now. We've got to improve. And then from there, it's his faith in people to improve. It's the greatest part about Kirk Ferentz, and it's how he develops people. He doesn't give up on them. At the same time, he's a bit loyal to a fault. I mean, we all know this.
That's the problem. So it doesn't mean he's right. He may have this standard and this motto and these ethics and these morals that he stands by, and 95% of life and as a coach, it plays to his advantage. But with this one thing, I think he's wrong.
Yeah, and it's cost benefit, it's risk reward. It's also Cade's last season as a player. I mean, and he's trying to give this guy a chance to redeem himself and make his comeback. He's fought through all these injuries. He's gone through all this hardship, and he was supposed to be our guy. And so I just think that it speaks to the quality of a man that Kirk Ferentz is, that he affords people the chance to improve. He trusts that they will improve. And for the most part, he does improve players. Now, that said, Kirk develops players like nobody else, except at quarterback. That's the one question mark. Does he really develop quarterbacks? Does his system?
That's why I brought up the coordinator illustration, because I'm not going to argue with you that he didn't believe that Brian Ferentz was the best person for the job. But if he truly believes that, then that is the proof we need right there to be able to say Kirk is not always right about what he believes is the proper and the best thing, because it's been proven. Tim has already proven that Brian was not best suited for the job. Like, it's already been proven that, in my mind, beyond any reasonable doubt. And so, but I believe I could see that Kirk really believed that because he's got this blind spot. In that case, it was his baby boy. And whatever the emotional attachment or those values that I think are very admirable on many levels, Corey, when you're talking about loyalty to people and wanting to give people second chances. But this isn't about Cade. This team and this record and this whole thing is not about Cade. It's about doing what's best for the team. And like Jim Harbaugh or not, guess what he did? Cade took him to a championship game, took him to a college football playoff spot, had to bench him because he had a better guy behind him. And unfortunately, I don't think he'll ever have the gumption to do that. And that's his biggest downfall. I believe his legacy will go back to that. It'll be the Brian Ferentz thing, and it'll be not being willing to adjust to the time and to the situation.
But KF did the same thing. He cut Rudock, and then they take Rudock over there. So
well, the situation was a little different. We're talking about apples to oranges as it relates to Jake Rudock and Cade McNamara. Jake Rudock was if you go back to 20, now he wasn't great down the stretch of 2014, but he proved at Michigan that he's kind of like Cade was at Michigan, right? He was serviceable at Michigan with better players around him. But CJ Beathard was threatening to leave. His family was basically saying, hey, if CJ's not named the starter, we're out. And there were different circumstances. So, and here's the thing. When he has made those adjustments, when he's been, whether his hand was forced or not, it's actually played to his advantage. When Beth Getz stepped in and said, Brian, you're done, it's played to his advantage. He's went out and hired who I think is a pretty darn good offensive coordinator in Tim Lester. CJ Beathard was the better quarterback. They got a 12-0 season out of him in 2015. Brad Banks, Kyle McCann, the Ricky Stanzi, Jake Christensen thing. It's actually benefited him when he's finally given in or been forced to give in and adjust. But too many times, in my opinion, he's not willing to do that in spite of history, recent history.
Yeah. And I mean, he's not perfect, and I'm not gonna argue with you on that. But just look at any great team, and yeah, they've got great receivers, skilled positions, but really, it's a great quarterback that makes great teams. I mean, who are we kidding? So, but let's use this model that we're talking about. How's it working out for Michigan? They're on quarterback 3. How's it working out for Michigan?
They did win a national championship last year.
Now I'm talking about this year.
I know, but
flip-flopping on quarterbacks. So if they'd have left Orgy in there, would he have developed and started to?
They also lost a first-round quarterback draft pick a year before his eligibility ended.
But my point is, I mean, flip-flopping quarterbacks isn't always the solution either. Sometimes those hardships will make that quarterback better, and in the end, by season's end, they become better, the best in your room by far.
Unfortunately, though, Iowa's season's done as it relates to their goals.
Well, yeah, I mean,
isn't it, Corey? You're a homer, but can you at least admit that they're not going to the Big Ten title game and they're not going to the 12-team playoff? Correct?
They're not.
I mean, at this point, isn't it too late? If Cade strikes fire in these last 5 games, what was it for? A 9-3 season with a bowl game? Is that enough?
Well, I think that we can't live life waiting for the end
world
climactic event that we all want. If we do that, we're going to be very disappointed. Let's just look at Florida State. Okay. How would you like to be a Florida State fan right now? They are loaded with talent and they suck. Okay. So that is disappointment.
Yeah.
Colorado to me is still disappointing. I mean, that's supposed to be the expectations they should be national champions this year based on expectations of, oh, we have, this phenom as coach now, and he's going to save us all. And we have all this Aero Electronics is funding our NIL. Oh, speaking of, I'm going to get off this. I sat next to a guy, a Spartan fan. He says, did you know that Rocco Becht was offered $1.2 million NIL money to be a backup quarterback for an SEC school? $1.2 million to be a backup quarterback for an SEC school. And he couldn't give me the name. He wasn't sure. But, rumors are rumors. But this guy's, he actually lives in Iowa now, but he's a Michigan State fan. But he went to the Iowa-Minnesota game. Anyway, it just crazy. Some of the things you hear. But when you watch Rocco Becht drive that ball down the field tonight and win that game with his feet, he won the game with his legs. He made some big passes, but he also scored the touchdown. And then he scored a 2-point conversion with his legs. Quarterback draw. Boom, 2 points. But my point is, as far as offense and as far as being elite, you got to have an elite quarterback. And we don't. Does Sullivan have the capability? Yeah. And if I'd be lying to you if I didn't say, when I go to these next few games, boy, would I like to see him go in? Oh man, it would be worth the trip just to see. You want to see. And so I'm with everyone there. Okay.
Corey,
now,
do you like being mildly famous? Because I've been cutting out these segments and posting them to the channel, and you got some people that go after you now because they disagree with you. And hey, now you can see life from my side of things when people go after you for your opinions.
Well, I won't bring up. It starts with a D, but I brought a name up, and some people came after me for Mr. D, a trainer.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and
yeah.
all of a sudden, then there was a whole podcast, a certain sportscaster did a segment on that. Well, I thought that was a good segment. I thought it was the fact that he pulled that, it was just very, just flabbergasting. Some of the things like Kirk and him have not talked since 2020 and all that. But I'm going to get back, moving forward on the defense. I think that we're overlooking Zach Lutmer. He fell down once in coverage, but he played great coverage. He got called for a PI. He was not guilty of that PI. He played solid. And I think he's got the most potential. You can see, being there live at the game, you can see where the cameras don't show it on TV. TJ Hall is giving guys 8 and 10 yard pads because he doesn't want to get smoked again. And I don't blame the kid. But you're playing, throwing 30-yard passes, and you're giving him an 8-yard pad. It's just pitch and catch. So, but Lutmer to me is the guy. And secondly, the fact that we're without Castro, that was huge. That was brutal. And that's another elephant in the room. Everybody wants to say, oh, we played like crap. We were without Castro. We don't have depth. We have no depth. We have all freshmen, sophomores that are inexperienced and they're undersized. I watched. Here's what happened every single time. If we were with our 4-2-5 set and we bring our 5 DBs to try to come up and deal with wide receivers trying to block our DBs. Those wide receivers manhandled TJ Hall, whatever, any of the Nestor, whatever, any of the younger guys, and even Lutmer. So then what do? Put Fisher back out there. At least then he can handle the wide receivers blocking him and get to that runner that's on these stretch plays or this running quarterback. To me, we should have kept Kyler Fisher in the game so that he could muscle through and fight off those wide receivers, because our smaller DBs could not get free. I watched it the whole game. Those wide receivers tied up our DBs, and they could not get free to get to the runner. Versus if you had a Kyler Fisher in there, he could have broke through some of those blocks and gotten to the runner. But in the end, it's not like Kirk Ferentz is holding a trump card here. He's not got the Joker, whatever's wild, whatever. Is Sullivan going to improve the situation? Yes. But if Sullivan would have played tonight, do you think that we would have won the game with the way the defense played?
I have no idea. How could I know that?
Well, that defense gave
the
up.
Listen, the defense was not good, but they held them to 4 straight field goals in the first half. If you got 1 touchdown in that first half, the game is totally different.
Yeah. I mean,
they scored nothing in the first half. It was only 12-0 at halftime. I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right, Corey, that you're probably right that Michigan State would have still won, but I hesitate to jump to that conclusion because we just don't know what the offense would look like under the leadership of Sullivan, because we haven't seen it under the leadership of Sullivan.
Yeah, but I think in the end, what I gather from tonight is people underestimated Michigan State. That team played one hell of a game. Those players coming out of that tunnel at Spartan Stadium, they were hopping. They were wired. They were stoked. And they're like, just get us on the field, because I think they felt disrespected by the Big Ten Network, by Corey Bratta, and by a lot of other people. And they played. They went out there and kicked some arse. I mean, they meant business tonight. And sometimes you need to just tip your hat to your opponent when they play a hell of a game. And I think that we need to do that with Michigan State. They deserve that. They deserve that respect. They earned that respect tonight. And I told a buddy of mine, I said, I don't know what they've been doing all season, but if they keep playing this way, they've got a top 10 win. They could win a game against a top 10 team if they play like they did tonight and eliminate one turnover.
You think that somebody on that team watched my segment and it was discussed?
No, not only that, I think that it was on the chalkboard. I think they played it on the iPad before the game.
Okay.
I think you own this loss, Brad. I really do.
All right, I'll take it.
That's my hot take.
Yeah, this one's on you.
I'm going to let you go now, Corey, but I respect every opinion you have, and I know you're not going anywhere, and we'll talk to you after the Northwestern game.
And the hope leading forward is Castro gets better. Lutmer, I think, showed promise even under absolute pressure tonight. He was playing guys tight, and he was not getting burned, and he wasn't scared. And, TJ Hall and Deshaun Lee have got a little bit of a rebuild in their confidence that has to take place, I'm afraid. But what's this? Oh, see, I'm not the only one. But anyway, I'm not giving up on this team, and I don't think that the season's over. And I'm with Don on this. If Iowa goes and plays, let's make it really fun. Alabama loses another game and they miss the college football playoff, and Iowa gets to go play Alabama, and it's Caden Proctor versus Jay Higgins.
Imagine Jalen Milroe against that defense tonight. Goodness gracious.
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll get better. But I think we exaggerated, and our expectations were a little unrealistic this year. They lost Cooper DeJean. There was holes in that defense. Crazy, huge holes in that defense. You're playing sophomores. These guys they don't have the bodies to go up against big receivers. They get pushed around. It was obvious again tonight. It was obvious against Iowa State. The guys got to develop physically, and so that they can, it all comes down to those 50-50 balls. Who's going to win them? MSU tonight was going to win every one of them. So anyway, I just think our expectations were unrealistic for this team this year. If Castro played and was active tonight, maybe that changes things. Now we start getting some sticks on guys tonight instead of them. I mean, that literally looked and felt just like when I sat in the Rose Bowl against Christian and we played Christian McCaffrey. They were toying with us to that degree. And that running back, his jump cuts and his cuts in the hole, that MSU running back, he is elite.
Corey, I have to let you go now because
Okay.
I'm getting the red light from my
All right.
better half. But
all right,
that's 1:20. You need to get some sleep too because you've crossed time zones. So, right? No, it's 2:20 out where you're at. So
time is just. I mean, why do we need clocks?
No, we just let Kirk Ferentz tell us what time it is. So
that's right. That's
Corey,
right.
thank you for calling in, sir. Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Man.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Appreciate it, man. All right. Our final caller of the night, our Iowa Smokehouse line. We've got Mr. Appin92. Welcome, sir.
Hey, can you hear me?
We are here and we hear you loud and clear. I might not be, I might have like 2% of my brain capacity working.
That's all right. Hey, end of the night. You read my comment earlier. I'm a first-time caller for you guys. I've been listening to you for years.
Appreciate that.
I don't want to beat the drum on everyone else tonight. Disappointing loss. I think defense, worst performance I've seen in a very long time.
Yep.
And just going off Corey at the end there, like he said a lot of things. I agree with a lot, but at the same time, like one thing I agreed on is losing Cooper this year has showed to be the biggest loss we've seen in the past for Phil's defense. I feel like that left side of the field has been exposed over and over again. If you go back and see how many passes were to the right side of the field compared to the left side of the field, it was always to the left. They ran to the right, passed to the left. It's an issue Iowa has needed to figure out before this point. And going back to you, Corey, I think 9-3 is not going to get it done this year. It's a disappointing year.
Yeah.
They should have figured it out up until this point.
I know people don't like hearing that, but I'm just saying I don't know what 9-3 accomplishes.
It doesn't. At this point, you're playing for a bowl game or maybe a better bowl game.
Yeah, and every year from now on, with the divisions gone, the goal has to be 12-team playoff.
Yep.
If it's not Big Ten championship game and subsequent playoff chances, then it's got to be just at-large playoff. And they're not getting in to the playoff at 9-3. And with this team and all the guys they had coming back, even though they lost Cooper DeJean, like you said, that had to be an expectation. I totally disagree with the last caller on expectations. We did not have too high expectations. This team has just not met them. 9-3 for this team with all those seniors they had coming back, and this schedule, which was very favorable. They avoid USC and Oregon and Michigan and Penn State. No, 9-3 is a disappointing year.
Yeah, I mean, like I think you said earlier, up to maybe 18 players leaving next year from the starting lineup. It's a rebuild with the changing environment. Yeah, with the changing environment, the Big Ten, no more divisions, everything going on. It's just like, where does Iowa have to look? Yeah, I like Tim Lester. I think he'll bring in people in the future. But his next 2-3 years, it's not looking good because they're going to rebuild. They're going to lose a lot of players. And looking at the schedule next year, they can go 2-9. They can go 6-6, obviously, but they could lose a lot of games next year. So I'm just looking towards the future because this game super deflating. It's thrown out all expectations. It's over for that.
It's to say real quick, it's hard to even project next season because this roster is going to be looking totally different. But even with the current guys, if they return to all the guys they have right now, which they won't, this year I predicted preseason they'd go 10-2. Now the best they can do is 9-3. But on next year's schedule, I would probably predict 8-4 with the schedule. That's how different the two schedules are.
I feel like it's like a high end. 8-4 would be like a good year for them next year as a rebuilding year.
I'm saying
with the current team,
with the current team. Oh yeah.
I'd say the current team heading into this year, if they were playing next year's schedule this year, I would have predicted 8-4.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's not taking into account all the loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's.
I mean, Phil and Kirk aren't here too much longer. I don't know what's going to replace them. I'm a little nervous for the future of Iowa football. My comment earlier, I was like, I just can't see the next 1, 2, 3 years. I mean, we never know. They could rebuild. They could bring in people. You never know. But it's just scary to think. I've been listening. I've been watching Iowa football for a better 15 years, and tonight's game was like one of the most deflating ones I've seen. There's a couple. That Penn State game the Purdue game after Penn State. I'm like, there's been some deflating losses, but tonight was like that nail. It's just like, oof. Oof.
But you know what? The way I look at this, it sucked, but you got 5 games left, and I'm just gonna sit back and enjoy the rest of the season, however that is, whatever that looks like. And I'm a big Iowa basketball guy, and I'll enjoy the start of Iowa basketball. And there's things bigger than football. We all have to remember that.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to stop watching Iowa football.
I'll be watching the games. Me and with my family, I'm usually like, up until this point, I've been watching play by play. I'm like, I want to listen to the announcers. I want to listen to plays. I want to see every play, every down. Now it's just like the game is going to be on, but I honestly don't care too much what happens. If they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. But I'm going to watch Iowa because I love Iowa. So.
Yep. Well, appreciate you calling in so late, sir, and we'll hope to talk to you again in future shows. Thanks for being a part of the show and watching for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are great. I love listening to all you guys. I called in after Coach left, but Kyle, Corey, you guys are amazing. I appreciate you guys taking my call.
Thank you
so much. Have a great night. All right, folks. Michigan State defeating Iowa 32-20. The Hawks now, best they can do is 9-3. So bottom line, Kyle, 1:30 in the morning. Get some sleep.
You want 2 more thoughts before we leave the audience for the night?
Not really, but if you must.
First game that the Iowa defense did not force a punt, and how many games would your guess be?
You have that answer? I have no clue.
I do have the answer.
50? No, not that many.
134.
Really?
2013 versus Ohio State.
13. So I'm trying to figure out when Norm retired. Did Norm retire in 10 or 11?
A couple years after him. Yeah, Norm
retired. Folks, while Kyle's doing that, just a reminder, if you've not liked the show, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and be sure to tell your friends, share the show out on social media. Kyle, when did he retire?
2011.
Okay, so just
2 years after his retirement. So yeah, that's 10 years of football. They haven't done that over 10 years. And another video getting a lot of attention on social media. Cade's 2 decent throws to Reese Vanderzee. There was something different about them that Twitter is now pointing out. He used the laces on both. So for all of the for all of the talk about Kate doesn't use the laces, I guess that's out the window now.
Interesting. Folks, be sure to check out our merch store, and you can also shop Amazon with us. You can donate by Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, all in the description. If you appreciate us staying up late, please extend your thanks and support the show. The links are in the description below. And, of course, we'll be back next week. Myself and Coach Don Patterson, maybe Kyle, maybe you, maybe us, maybe all of us. We'll hang in there. And Iowa basketball starting very soon. I'll post-game coverage for both the men and the women. Lots of fun stuff coming your way. Kyle, appreciate you being here tonight.
Can't say it was fun, but it was something.
Folks, I'll be back live with you Tuesday with the voice of college football, Mark Rogers himself. Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Central Time over on the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel on YouTube. We'll talk to you then. Get some sleep, folks. Have a great weekend.